Chapter 1. Wow, Rob. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry. As soon as Rob regained consciousness, he heard the girl's sobbing apology ringing in his ears. Rob's first reaction was that his girlfriend had dyed his hair green. But soon, he realized that he didn't have a girlfriend. So, what's going on now? Why is there a girl crying on me? Rob wanted to open his eyes to find out what was going on, but a sudden severe headache forced him to stop. At this moment, a more mature female voice sounded in his ears, interrupting the girl's crying. It's not your fault, baby. If you really want to blame someone, blame me and your father. The girl's mother came over and comforted her. The girl still blamed herself. No. I killed Rob. It's all my fault, etc. Killed Rob? I'm not dead yet. I can rescue it. Rob ignored the headache and wanted to shout out loud, but found that he couldn't open his mouth. He tried to open his eyes again, suppressing the headache, but it was no use no matter how hard he tried. It's as if this body is not my own. Beside him, the conversation between mother and daughter continued without Rob noticing anything unusual. No. This isn't your fault, Zoe. There are some truths that I should have told you earlier. The truth. Yes, the truth. Your great-grandmother also suffered from this genetic pain. I prayed that you would not inherit such blood, but God obviously did not listen to my prayers. Zoe, I'm sorry that you will have to take a different path from now on. Mom, I don't understand you. Which blood, Zoe? This is not a fictional legend, but a real fact. The power derived from the Salem witches has always been flowing in our family's blood. But not every generation or every girl will inherit it. Your great-grandmother obtained this power and became a witch. And you, Zoe, I don't know whether to say it is fortunate or unfortunate, you have now become a witch too. Witch? The girl said in disbelief. Witch? Rob, who had been listening, was surprised at the same time. For some reason, he suddenly felt a sense of familiarity, as if he had seen it somewhere. Just as he was thinking hard, the voice from Zoe's mother continued, I'm very sorry about Rob's death. This was an accident that no one wanted to see. So Zoe, in order to prevent such accidents from happening again in the future, you must learn to control the power of the witch. I have called the council, and they will take you to New Orleans. There is a boarding school there that specifically accepts girls like you. You will be safe there. You're sending me away? But Rob. Don't worry, I will arrange Rob's funeral. No. No. Rob yelled. He didn't want to be cremated or lie in a coffin for the rest of his life. I'm still alive. At this moment, the strong desire to survive gave birth to Rob's infinite power. The invisible force that restricted all his actions was finally broken. After a book-like shadow flashed through his mind, Rob, who had no time to think, opened his eyes with difficulty, raised his arm with difficulty, and used the last bit of strength to greet the mother and daughter beside him. Hey, I think, I can still salvage it. After saying that, Rob's eyes went dark and he passed out. Rob. The next second, the girl screamed in surprise and her mother exclaimed in disbelief. When Rob woke up again, he found himself lying on a hospital bed. A youthful blonde girl was lying on the bed, sleeping tiredly. As Rob looked at her, a series of past memories suddenly flashed through his mind. Zoe Benson, his girlfriend at school, wanted to taste the forbidden fruit for the first time, so they met at his home and he helped introduce her to the family. Unexpectedly, it was fine at the beginning, but it died after a few seconds. Wrong. Rob shook his head vigorously, and a new memory came flooding back to him. In another world, he was a carefree Chinese college student. He found a very ancient book in a used bookstall one day and was about to return to the dormitory to study it carefully. Unexpectedly, when he was crossing the road, a speeding sports car that ran a red light hit him head-on. And then there was no more in that world. So I have traveled through time? Recalling another memory in his mind, Rob discovered that his original self looked exactly like him. It's just that this way of dying is too weird. But, why does this beginning seem so familiar? Weird way to die, witch, Zoe. Rob was suddenly startled and quickly turned his head towards his cheap girlfriend. He reached out to push away the messy hair in front of her face, and a pure and sweet face of a Western girl came into view. Really? No wonder it looks so familiar. Isn't this one of the heroines from American Horror Story, Coven? In this case, he has replaced the unlucky boyfriend who died just seconds after appearing on the stage and has become Zoe's current boyfriend. How so? Rob was puzzled. Zoe, who heard the noise, opened her eyes. The moment she saw her boyfriend had woken up, she threw herself into Rob's arms without thinking, and said excitedly, "Thank God. Rob, it's great that you're still alive. I was so scared before. I'm so sorry. I didn't expect something like that to happen. It's all my fault." Zoe spoke incoherently about her guilt and joy again. Feeling the young girl's youthful body in his arms, Rob came back to his senses and said, "I." Before he could finish his words, Rob felt his vision go dark and his mouth was enveloped by warmth. This is too sudden." Rob was a little overwhelmed when he experienced the enthusiasm of a Western girl for the first time. What's worse is that he has no experience. In the end, Rob could only passively accept everything. The welcome ceremony for the time traveler finally came to an end when the bedside monitor almost sounded the alarm due to the pounding heart. Although still a little shocked, Rob convinced himself to accept it. After all, what's there to complain about when you're given a new life? Looking at Zoe, who sometimes handed him water to drink, sometimes peeled fruit for him to eat, and obeyed his orders with eyes full of him, Rob, who had just arrived, breathed a sigh of satisfaction. Who wouldn't be happy to be given a sweet girlfriend at the beginning? Although this girlfriend is a Black Widow. She is not the sexy Black Widow in black leather jacket in American comics, but the real kind who eats her boyfriend without spitting out the skin. But it's better than those people who still don't have a girlfriend until the end of a book. Chapter 2. Inside the hospital ward. Just as Rob was enjoying Zoe's meticulous care, a sudden exclamation sounded, "What pure love! It reminds me of my youth." Rob and Zoe were startled and looked in the direction of the voice. Unknowingly, a woman with long orange hair, wearing a shawl dress, long lace gloves and dressed like a noble lady, appeared on the chair in the ward. "Who are you?" Zoe stood up and asked the strange woman politely. "Me? I'm the same type as you, Zoe. You can call me Myrtle." The woman named Myrtle took off her sunglasses, smiled and introduced herself. "Same kind." Thinking of what her mother had said before, Zoe asked in surprise, "Are you a witch?" "My dear, you should ask, are you a witch too? Now you are one of us." Myrtle stood up and walked over. While Zoe was feeling very uncomfortable, she stroked her face as if she was appreciating a beautiful painting and said, "I rushed here immediately after the council received the letter from your mother. Nowadays, there are fewer and fewer girls who awaken the Salem bloodline. Every discovery is great news for the council. Zoe, are you ready? Head to New Orleans and join where you truly belong." Hearing this, Zoe first glanced at Rob, who had been very quiet since Myrtle appeared, then turned to Myrtle and shook her head, "No. I don't want to go to New Orleans, I want to stay here." Myrtle's smile faded, and she sighed slightly, "My dear, this is not something you want to do. The council has the responsibility to protect the safety of every witch. Although it is not the Middle Ages now, the persecution of witches has always existed. Just a few days ago, a girl who awakened the power of a witch like you was burned alive by a group of fools as a devil. Zoe, you don't want to end up like this. In addition..." At this point, Myrtle suddenly looked at Rob on the hospital bed and said with surprise on her face, "Not everyone can be as lucky as your little boyfriend to crawl back from the underworld. Zoe, you need to learn to control your power. Am I right, the boy named Rob?" "Yes, yes." Facing the real witch's gaze, Rob, who had previously volunteered to act as a background wall, forced a smile. He recognized Myrtle the first time he saw her. After all, her Myrtle outfit was too conspicuous. It was because he recognized the other person's identity that Rob had been quietly being a handsome man. With his weak arms and legs, he doesn't want to get involved in a fight with a group of witches with mental problems. Although he was somewhat touched by the fact that Zoe didn't want to go to the Witch Academy for his sake, he would rather not have this feeling of being touched. Especially now that Myrtle was looking at him with eyes full of curiosity, as if she were dissecting a corpse. "I am well aware of the abilities of the witches in the Benson family. In history, there has never been a case where someone survived after being harmed. I have to say, Rob, you have given me another surprise," Myrtle said to Rob with a smile. Rob's face moved unnaturally. "Should I say it's an honor?" "Of course. You have survived a situation where you were sure to die, Rob. Your vitality is commendable. If I hadn't discovered that you have wizard blood in your body, I would have thought you were an unawakened wizard. But you are different from ordinary people after all. Myrtle glanced at Rob meaningfully, then turned to Zoe and said, My dear, I know you can't bear to leave your boyfriend. Let's put it this way. Spalding, the butler of the boarding school, is old and needs a successor. Since your boyfriend knows about the existence of witches and he is a little special, let him go to New Orleans with you. Zoe's face lit up with joy. As long as she didn't separate from her boyfriend, this result would be good. She was moved and immediately looked at Rob. Rob just felt his scalp tingling. Let him live with a bunch of witches? And serve as a servant? No. Rob shook his head and said, I'm not going. He looked at the disappointed Zoe and said with deep affection, Zoe, Ms. Myrtle is right. As a witch, you need to find your companions. This is not only for your safety, but also so that you can better assume the identity of a witch. It won't be too late to come back after you graduate from school. Don't worry. I'll always be waiting for you. Although this result is likely to cause Zoe to find a new love, Rob is still willing to let go for the sake of his own life. Q. How to stay away from danger in a world with a familiar plot. Answer. Of course, stay away from the protagonist. Rob is ready to go to the Celestial Empire. With his fluent English, he can definitely find a good job there. Rob. At the same time, hearing Rob say this, the disappointment on Zoe's face instantly turned into emotion. Just as she was about to pounce on him again and express her love to Rob, Myrtle interrupted and said, Mr. Rob, I'm not asking for your opinion. For the Council, in order to protect the safety of the witches, outsiders are not allowed to know of our existence. Rob's heart tightened, and he forced a smile. Witches should be able to make potions. Is there a potion that can make people forget things? I'd like to have a drink. Of course. But it will also turn the person who drinks the medicine into an idiot. That's fine. Rob, who didn't want to be alone in his future life, immediately shook his head. Is there really no room for negotiation? Yes. First, Rob, you took the initiative to go with us. Second, well. Myrtle clapped her hands, and the next second, two tall and strong men in black suits and black sunglasses walked in. Just let them come and take you away. Myrtle's words undoubtedly blocked all of Rob's escape routes. Looking at the burly man whose arms were thicker than his thighs, Rob sighed, rationally faced the reality, and stopped resisting. I'd better take the initiative. My dear, I've thought about it carefully and I'm still worried about you going to a strange city alone. Let me stay with you from now on. Dear Rob. Boom. Boom. The train to New Orleans roared along. No matter which world it is, America's trains are hard to describe. Rob, who was swaying all the way, had no desire to sleep. Zoe, who was used to all this, rested her head on his shoulder and fell asleep with a sweet smile on her face. Rob supported his cheap girlfriend who was about to fall, then glanced at Myrtle and the men in suits sitting on the other side of the aisle, and closed his eyes. It's not about closing your eyes and resting. Instead, in my mind, I was staring at a book that shouldn't be here. The moment he broke free from the shackles and spoke to Zoe and her daughter, an image of a book emerged in his mind. Over this period of time, what started out as a simple outline has gradually become more substantial. At this moment, not long after I closed my eyes, I finally completed the last stroke of this book. This is... Rob's face was filled with surprise as he looked at the complete appearance of the book in his mind. Chapter 3. Isn't this the book I found in my original world? Both the style and the texture are the same. The only difference is that the originally yellowed cover has now been replaced by a bright red one. Not the kind of red dye, but real flesh and blood red. Is this my golden finger? It feels a little bit wrong. As Rob was muttering, suddenly, extremely creepy ghostly howls erupted from the bloody book. Rob looked quickly. In an instant, a large number of ugly, ferocious, violent, and other horrible ghost faces emitting evil auras emerged from all over the cover, struggling desperately to break free from the book. No matter how they pulled the book beyond recognition, they were still unable to escape, and in the end they could only be absorbed back into the book with a look of panic and despair as the pages turned. Everything returned to calm. As if nothing had happened. Just as Rob, who felt like he had watched a horror movie, was about to calm his heartbeat, the book in front of him, which had returned to normal, suddenly moved and flew in front of him. Rob took it subconsciously, looked down, and saw a line of terrifying words on the bloody cover emitting a black luster like the abyss. Book of Containment of the Supernatural. This is the name of the book in your hand. Rob, not sensing any danger, turned the cover and looked at the first page, which contained only a small inscription. See, secure, contain. In an instant, he seemed to see a scene of countless evil spirits wailing and begging for mercy. Rob blinked and the illusion disappeared. Not knowing what was going on, he turned to the second page and saw a row of directories. From top to bottom, from no 000 no 001 to number 999 and even to infinity. Page 3 of the book, no 000 Introduction. Here, Rob saw information about himself. No, 000 Name, Rob. Type, Human. Physique, 1.1 Spiritual, 0.1 Ability, None. Containment point, 0. Introduction. As the nemesis of all supernatural beings in the world and the owner of the Book of Supernatural Containment, you hold the most powerful power and authority in the world. Of course, you also have to bear the corresponding obligations. What does this mean? Rob asked himself in confusion. As soon as he finished speaking, the Book of Supernatural Containment in his hand burst into brilliant light. Unable to resist, he was sucked into the book. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. A large amount of information about the Book of Supernatural Containment flooded into Rob's consciousness. When he opened his eyes again, everything became clear. Unnoticed by anyone, including the witch Myrtle, Rob summoned a mysterious book in reality that only he could see. It is because of the existence of this book that he is able to travel to this world and continue to live. Not only that, it also gives oneself the power to live safely in this bizarre world. As the name suggests, the Book of Supernatural Containment contains all supernatural, mysterious, and spiritual things that are different from common sense. As the owner of this book, every time Rob takes in a supernatural being, he will gain corresponding shelter points. The shelter can enhance one's physical and spiritual qualities, and also gain corresponding abilities. This is definitely a good thing for Rob, who will be living with a group of witches in the future. What made him feel difficult was how to contain those supernatural things. You have to know that the so-called supernatural things are most likely ghosts, evil spirits, and other existences that cannot be explained by science, or how ordinary people deal with it. In addition, while enjoying the joy of adding points, you also have to undertake the cumulative shelter mission once every 10 days. This corresponds to the relationship between authority and obligation mentioned in the introduction. Depend on. This is forcing myself to fight to the death with all the supernatural things in the future. I don't know if there will be any changes in the future. After all, the physique, spirituality, ability, and shelter will all change. Even gender. If you want, you can choose one from the more than 100 categories that are constantly being updated and added, and you don't have to undergo any exchange surgery. The mission can't always remain unchanged. If all the supernatural beings in the world are taken in the future, will I have to sacrifice my own life? Rob picked up the Book of Supernatural Containment and ran his fingers over the pages, looking at the pages after no 001 no 002 and so on, which were all blank, as if waiting to be filled in. He comforted himself that this might be some kind of qualification test. Suddenly, the Book of Confinement lit up with a scarlet light, and a message came into Rob's mind. Containable target found. Containable target? Rob looked around, finally focusing his attention on Zoe and Myrtle. The so-called supernatural should also include witches with supernatural powers. Accommodate them? Joke. Let's not talk about whether I can win now. Even if he could win, he would be crushed to ashes by a group of witches afterwards. Besides, Zoe is so beautiful, why would he kill his girlfriend to prove his truth? Rob shook his head, ignored the reminder, and put the Book of Shelter back into his mind. There are still 10 days left, so let's take it one step at a time. New Orleans, Louisiana. As a port city in the southern United States and the largest city in the state, although the economy is good, due to a major hurricane after the millennium, the city's population has dropped sharply and has not recovered until now. Of course, this only applies to ordinary people. Due to historical reasons and the influence of the vast swamps and wetlands around it, New Orleans is associated with almost all ghost legends, anecdotes, and voodoo myths in the United States. Although most of them are false, there are some true ones. For example, a witch. After the Salem witch trials, the descendants of the Salem witches moved to New Orleans and have continued to this day. And today, in New Orleans, at the gate of a school called Robichaux School for Outstanding Women, actually a witch school, a new student and a male servant arrived. Myrtle disappeared after being sent here. Rob looked at Zoe and saw that she was staring at him eagerly, looking at a loss. He shrugged and pressed the doorbell. Ding dong. As soon as the bell rang, the door opened automatically. Let's go. Rob dragged 2 large suitcases and took Zoe into the quaint white house. As soon as I entered, I saw that it was dark inside and there was no sound at all. It was like entering a haunted house. Considering that this was the legendary witch's residence, Zoe asked nervously, "Is anyone here?" Thump. The house door suddenly closed automatically. When Zoe turned around, she saw a dark shadow flashing past from the corner of her eye. She was startled and asked quickly, "Is anyone there? Is anyone there?" No one answered. At the same time, strange black figures appeared and disappeared rapidly in the room. Zoe quickly grabbed Rob's arm, looked around nervously and said, "Rob, did you see that?" "Certainly." Rob nodded calmly. "A welcome ceremony for new students. Although it is a bit shady, it is also in line with the characteristics of a witch." Chapter 4. Zoe looked around nervously. When she noticed 3 strange-looking people wearing black robes and crow masks suddenly appeared from all directions and walked towards her quickly with daggers in hand, she could no longer hold back and shouted, "Rob! Run!" After saying that, she grabbed Rob's arm and was about to take him away. Unexpectedly, Rob not only did not move, but pressed her where she was. "Zoe, relax." Rob patted Zoe on the shoulder, then looked at the 3 black-robed men who were getting closer and closer, and greeted them with a smile. "Hey, girls, I have to say your welcome ceremony is quite novel." The 3 men in black robes paused and looked at each other. One of them seemed unwilling to give in. He came to Rob and the other man with a dagger in his hand, muttering, "Mother of Darkness, we offer you these 2 living bodies," and raised his arm, about to stab with the dagger. But she saw Rob still looking at her with a smile on his face, and Zoe, who believed in her boyfriend, was still a little scared, but she did not run away again. The man in black robe suddenly felt bored and simply threw away the dagger, took off his mask and hood, revealing his shiny golden hair and delicate and beautiful face. She curled her lips and said, "The plot didn't develop as expected. It's so boring." "That's because your acting is terrible." The other 2 men in black robes also took off their disguises, and one of them, a fat black girl, complained. The blonde beauty raised her slender eyebrows, turned around and said with disdain, "Really? It's better to say that your huge size gives everything away. No cult member is as fat as you." The black girl flew into a rage, "UBCH." Before he could finish his words, he was interrupted by Zoe who had just reacted, "Everyone, can you tell me what is going on? Seriously, we want to hold a welcome ceremony for the new members." The petite girl with a strange face who had not spoken before smiled and said, "Madison made the idea. My name is Nan. Madison Montgomery, a Hollywood movie star, feel free to ask me for her autograph if you need one." Madison, the most beautiful girl among the witches, rolled her eyes at the black girl and turned to greet Zoe, but her eyes were fixed on Rob standing beside her with interest. "Shit, when was the last time you filmed a movie?" After habitually making a sarcastic remark, the black girl introduced herself, "Quinny. Zoe. This is..." Just as Zoe was about to introduce her boyfriend to everyone, Madison interrupted and said, "Rob, I know. Cordelia has already said so before. I heard that he is here to take over Spaulding's position. I've long been fed up with that perverted old man who has a stern face all day long. It's great to have a young and handsome exotic guy join us. Rob, can you cook Chinese food? I'd love to change my appetite." A fragrant breeze blew over him. Noticing Madison's charming almond-shaped eyes staring at him passionately, Rob, who had gradually integrated into this society, said calmly, "I can cook some simple Chinese food, but I don't know if it suits your taste." Madison was in a good mood and said, "I think I'll get used to it." Watching this scene, Queenie muttered to Nan beside her, "This BCH is always thinking about FK. No, Madison is just interested in Rob's fresh face, not to the extent of Fark," explained Nan, who has the ability to read minds. Then she looked at Rob and said happily, "I like this new butler very much." Queenie was surprised and asked, "Why? Are you interested in this new guy?" "No. There is no noise in his mind. This is good. It can make my ears quieter." Nan's ability to read minds is uncontrollable, and he has always been troubled by the constant voices of those around him. Something unexpected happened today, and Rob was the first person whose mind was not read by her. Nan didn't realize what this meant yet, but she was happy to meet someone quiet. At this time, Zoe, who had already realized that Madison was too enthusiastic, quickly interrupted the conversation. Rob took the time to look at this class of new witches. Zoe with the power of Black Widow, Madison who can control objects with her mind, Queenie, a humanoid voodoo doll that can transfer damage, and Nan who can read minds. Before coming, he was a little worried that Nan's mind-reading ability would expose his secret. Fortunately, after I mastered the Book of Supernatural Containment, abilities such as mind-reading and body possession are no longer effective on me. This made him feel at ease and he decided to stay here for a while. At least being a witch's servant does get a salary. You have to know that in America, having money and having no money are two completely different worlds. For the original person, whose parents had been missing since childhood, who had been running back and forth between various boarding houses and had not saved much money, ignoring the danger, this was indeed a good job as it provided food and accommodation, as well as a salary. Seeing that no one else came, Zoe asked in surprise, "So, there are only 3 of you students in the school?" For now, a voice interrupted. Everyone looked and saw a mature woman walking over. "I'm your headmistress, Cordelia Fox." Cordelia smiled and introduced herself to Zoe, then looked at Madison and the other 2 and said, "Okay, girls, that's enough chatting. The truck full of groceries is parked in the driveway, waiting for you to unload it. I'm going to take Zoe to her room. I'll see you at lunchtime." "Oh, yes, and Rob." She looked at Rob. Rob quickly said respectfully, "Hello, Lady Cordelia." A very polite boy. Cordelia looked at Rob for a few times and said, "Spaulding will arrange your work next. Learn from him. Remember, the most important thing to abide by when working here is confidentiality." "I understand, Lady Cordelia," Rob assured. Cordelia nodded with satisfaction, then called Spaulding over and said to him, "Spaulding, your assistant is here. You will be in charge of arranging the accommodation and work matters." Spaulding, with his thinning hair and long, stiff face, nodded in silence. The tongueless man waved for Rob to follow. At this moment, the life of a butler officially begins. After Rob and Zoe said a brief goodbye, he followed Spaulding with his suitcase. As a witch school, the house where Rob lives is very large. At its peak, it can even accommodate more than 60 people at the same time. As a result, Rob enjoyed a luxurious single dormitory. Perhaps considering his relationship with Zoe, his room was very close to Zoe and Madison's dormitories, both on the 2nd floor, making it very convenient for him and his girlfriend to do some naughty things. Stop. Rob quickly stopped this dangerous thought. Zoe is a veritable Black Widow. The last time I was able to survive was because of my own time travel. If it happens again, I can't guarantee that I won't follow in his footsteps. Why? The home is there, but the door is impassable. What a pity. Chapter 5. At noon, the witches' lunch meeting was in progress. After packing his luggage and tidying up the room, Rob walked into the kitchen, ready to help Spaulding who was making pastries, but was coldly rejected by the other party. In the absence of outsiders, it was obvious that the old butler, who had served witches for generations, was not very happy about Rob's arrival. Obviously, he doesn't want to be replaced. "It's your fault for not giving birth to offspring. You're such a disgusting doll hater." Watching Spaulding preparing food on his own, Rob, who couldn't get involved, shrugged and thought to himself. "That's fine. Do you really think he is willing to serve others?" Since someone was willing to take on all the work, Rob began to paddle with peace of mind. Seeing Rob playing with his mobile phone, Spaulding squeezed his lips stiffly. After finishing the pastries in his hand, he took the plate to the hall. Rob glanced at him and continued to look through the contents of his phone without paying any attention. He did not forget that he had 10 days to contain a supernatural being. To this end, he specifically searched for some urban legends and horror stories about New Orleans on his mobile phone, hoping to find clues. After all, my only impression of New Orleans is the New Orleans grilled wings. As one of the famous ghost towns in the United States, New Orleans does have many famous urban legends. The most famous among them is undoubtedly the Voodoo Queen Mary Laverne. This legendary voodoo queen with great power is now buried in Lafayette Cemetery No. 1. It is said that as long as you draw 3 XS on her grave, you can receive voodoo blessings. Of course, this is bullshit. Rob knew that the so-called voodoo queen was still alive and now ran a hair salon in the lower 9th ward. Rob doesn't even dare to offend the witch now, let alone the voodoo queen who has been fighting with the witch for so many years. So this goal pass. However, according to online reports, there are many haunted legends in Lafayette Cemetery No. 1, and even rumors of vampires, so it could become a potential target for me. In addition, there are other urban legends in New Orleans. For example, the Madame Lalaurie haunted house, the axe murderer who has not been found yet and who loves jazz. The original owner of the former was still alive under the curse, and with the Supreme Witch watching, it was difficult for Rob to take advantage of her. As for the latter, he had been killed by the witch predecessors long ago, and his evil spirit has been wandering in this house ever since his death. However, this evil spirit is so hidden that even the witch has not discovered it for all these years. Rob didn't know how to find the other party. If it doesn't work, ask your girlfriend to channel it through spirits. Of course, with a group of witches here, it is difficult to explain and operate. In addition, the axe murderer's strength is a bit abnormal, so it is better to treat it as the last resort. Rob glanced at the other urban legends. The long-standing swamp monster, haunted hotel and restaurant, various vampire legends and so on. After planning his route in New Orleans, Rob, who was a little hungry, found a sandwich in the refrigerator to fill his stomach, and then thought about the most important one. How to get rid of those supernatural things. Cross, Bible, holy water. Although I am not a religious person, I still need to prepare these props that often appear in movies. It doesn't cost any money anyway. Just go to a nearby church and say you want to join, and you'll get these things for free, and you can also have a nice church lunch. In addition, American-style IAI is also essential. When facing physical supernatural creatures, bullets are still powerful. Of course, most importantly, Rob needs a helper. No matter how much preparation he made, it couldn't hide the fact that he was a novice who had never even killed a chicken. When facing those supernatural creatures, having a powerful supernatural helper by your side is definitely the best protection. Coincidentally, there is a group of witches around me. With my own connections and what is going to happen next, I can find a good helper. Thinking of this, Rob's eyes lit up and he began to make preparations. Afternoon time. Cordelia teaches wizard knowledge to the young witches, while Spaulding returns to his attic, puts on adult children's clothes, and cosplays as a doll. Rob, who really had no job to do, pocketed the only few $100s he had, walked out of the house, and followed the map route marked on his phone to the nearest gun store. Since the Great Hurricane in the early years, the public security in New Orleans has been deteriorating. Coupled with the fact that the black population, which ranks among the highest in the United States, has added fuel to the fire, the city is now known as the murder capital. Just as if every child was equipped with a gun, there would be no school shootings. Poor public security has led to a strong martial spirit among the people of New Orleans. Correspondingly, various gun stores are doing good business. When Rob walked into one of the stores, he saw the store owner selling a newly arrived children's version of the rifle to a father and son, or to be exact, to the son who looked to be in elementary school. Having integrated his original body's memories, Rob is no longer surprised by this strange phenomenon. Without saying anything else, I just want to ask you, do you know how many types of genders there are in the United States? Do you know? Just the ones Rob saw online included men, women, women who identified themselves as men, men who identified themselves as women, people who had undergone S*X reassignment surgery and now changed back, people who identified themselves as either men or women and could change their gender at any time, people who did not identify themselves as men or women, some special gender, such as Walmart shopping bags, armed helicopters, etc. If you count them all, there are at least more than 100 categories, so detailed that you will be stunned. Rob shook his head and ignored these troubles. Instead, he focused his attention on the dazzling array of long and short guns on the gun rack. Pistols, rifles, shotguns, sniper rifles, general-purpose machine guns are all available. Although most of them are civilian castrated versions, as long as you pay some money privately or modify them yourself, you can complete the castrated version. In addition, buying a gun is also very easy, just show the relevant qualifications. Many stores will sell you a gun even without a certificate. This is particularly evident in New Orleans. Rob had obtained a gun license, so he didn't have to worry about these things. Limited by funds and the influence of travel, although Rob longed for those powerful rifles and even machine guns, he still rationally set his sights on pistols. After some selection, he chose the Glock 17 pistol, which is also one of the most popular pistols on the US market. It uses a 9mm caliber and is a medium-sized pistol that can carry 17 rounds of ammunition. It is easy to use, has high reliability, high accuracy, strong shooting power, strong durability and affordable price, making it the first choice for many people. As for why not buy a pistol with a larger caliber like the Desert Eagle, or even one that can kill an elephant with one shot? Let's put aside the price. With his arm, after a round of shooting, he would probably break his own arm before killing the enemy. So let's get back to reality. After a fierce bargaining battle with his boss, Rob spent almost all of his savings and bought a Glock 17 pistol and 6 magazines. Using the training ground behind the gun shop, Rob emptied 2 magazines. After regaining his sense of the gun, he put the pistol into the holster given by the boss, put it on his waist, and walked towards a nearby church. By the time he walked in with a pious look on his face, it was already an hour later when he came out. After enduring such a long period of spiritual baptism, the gains were quite good. Looking at the cross blessed by the priest himself, the Bible and holy water in his arms, Rob returned to the Witch Academy with a sense of relief, although he didn't know what the real effect was. Next, comes the most important. Helper. Chapter 6. Robichaux Academy for Outstanding Women. After a whole day of leisure, Rob finally remembered his work in the evening and came to the kitchen. He ignored Spaulding's unhappy look as if he was offended by his territory, picked up the pots and pans, and after a while, he fried a plate of scrambled eggs with tomatoes. This is one of the only dishes he can cook. Fortunately, everyone has their own expertise. Everyone who has eaten his plate of scrambled eggs with tomatoes applauded. I just don't know if it will suit the taste of young witches. Strictly speaking, American Chinese food and Chinese food are two different concepts. Rob was dividing scrambled eggs with tomatoes among 4 plates and walking toward the dining room when he heard Madison joking about Spaulding's severed tongue. This girl will sooner or later be ruined by her own sharp tongue. But now Rob wanted to say that the other party did a good job. Watching Spaulding, with a gloomy face, walking angrily past him, Rob smiled obscurely. I want you to have a sullen face all day long. Are you proud to have served witches for generations? Are you addicted to being a servant? When will I teach you whether kings, princes, generals, and ministers are born with different species? The right path is to become the master. Of course, all this depends on your own strength. Rob, who still needed to be convinced, came to the table and said to the young witch, "Girls, this is absolutely authentic Chinese food I made myself. See if it suits your taste." Dear Rob, you are so thoughtful. Madison was in a good mood after she casually mentioned it in the morning and realized it in the evening. Especially after comparing it with Spaulding's ugly face, she smiled brightly and said, "Rob, I have to say, you are the ideal boyfriend." This woman has a fever again. Queenie complained on the other side. Nan also smiled and said, Madison is becoming more and more interested in Rob. Hearing this, Zoe, who had stood up and was helping Rob carry the plate, frowned. To prevent the witches from fighting before they had eaten, Rob quickly asked, "Try it and see how it tastes." Queenie was the first to pick up her fork. Soon, her eyes lit up and she said, "It's delicious. I didn't expect that tomatoes and eggs fried together would taste like this." After saying that, she quickly finished the food on the plate. It was obvious that she was not being polite. Zoe also tasted a few bites at this time, and said in surprise, "Rob, why didn't I know you were such a good cook before? I just started learning it not long ago, and I wanted to give you a surprise." After Zoe's heart was filled with joy after hearing these words, Rob looked at the remaining 2 and asked, "Madison, Nan, how does it taste?" Nan said, "It's a very novel taste, I think I will like it." "Yes, the taste is a little different compared to the Chinese restaurants I went to in Los Angeles, but this is called authentic. Spaulding only makes a few things over and over again. Rob, I'm going to have to rely on you to save my stomach from now on." Madison gave Rob a sweet smile. "It's my pleasure." Without disturbing the other's meal, Rob patted Zoe on the shoulder and turned and left. Looking at Rob's back, Madison said to Zoe beside her excitedly, "I didn't expect you like this type of guy. I've never dated an Asian guy. How does it feel, Zoe?" Zoe blushed, "What's going on? I heard that Asian men are smart, shy, not very humorous, and many are nerdy and have no fun. Is Rob like this? I feel like he's a little different. Oh, and does Rob know Kung Fu? Madison asked a series of questions, and at the end she boldly asked, how is Rob in that aspect? I heard that Asian men. That's enough. Queenie interrupted, it's time for dinner now. Madison, you have a fever, so we have to change the time. Madison stopped and looked at Queenie with anger in her eyes. At this time, Nan suddenly comforted Zoe, who looked a little bad. It was just an accident, Zoe. Rob is still alive, and I believe that you will have a happy love in the future, although it is a little different. Nan, you. Zoe raised her head and said in surprise. Nan can read minds. Zoe, you can't hide anything from her. Madison explained, then looked at Nan again, eyes full of gossip. Rob is still alive? This is very interesting. Nan, tell me what happened between these two. No. Zoe said quickly, not wanting to talk about the past. Nan listened in and turned to Madison and said, why don't I tell you about your murder, Madison? What's there to say? Madison pouted indifferently. My agent is always upset with me. He pushed the blame onto me even though it was clearly not my fault, and he would not tolerate any rebuttal. During a stage rehearsal, he said I was wrong again, so I taught him a lesson. Unexpectedly, the light hit him on the head. Well, I did do this. Hearing this, Queenie said in a serious tone, your agent just wants you to get the right position. Can't you benefit mankind and take a good acting class? An 18th tier outdated female star. Botox Queen. Bang. Madison couldn't bear it any longer and stretched out her hand, causing the plate in front of Queenie to fall over instantly, with the food splashing all over her. Seeing this, Queenie also used the power of the humanoid voodoo doll without saying a word. Clank, clank. Suddenly, a fierce fight broke out in the restaurant. By the time Rob heard the noise and came over, the fight was over. Nan took Queenie away, leaving only Zoe and Madison at the table. What happened? Rob asked deliberately. Madison quickly adjusted her mood. She was saying to Zoe, there is no choice now, only you and I can be together. When she heard the voice, her eyes lit up and she said, I almost forgot about you, Rob. It's just a secret between girls. I don't think you'd be interested in listening, Rob. After explaining this, Madison picked up her phone and waved it at the two of them. I just saw on Twitter that there's a party being held by a fraternity tonight. Rob, Zoe, are you interested in going together? Certainly. This was Rob's purpose, so he naturally nodded in agreement. He looked at Zoe again and said, Zoe, you've been too tense recently. It's time to relax. Her boyfriend had said so, and Zoe nodded in agreement. Finally, Madison looked at the two people's clothes with a critical look on her face. It doesn't matter if it's a boy. Zoe, do you have any other brands of clothes besides Gap? In the United States, Gap is a low-end, affordable brand designed for the mass market. Zoe's family income is average, so she can only wear clothes of this brand. She shook her head somewhat embarrassedly. Madison is quite generous in this regard. In order to show off your charm at the party, you can borrow mine first. Let's have some fun tonight. Chapter 7. Boiling music, gorgeous lights, surging heat waves, and men and women dancing like gods and demons. This was the lively scene that Rob, Zoe, and Madison saw when they arrived at the party. Unlike Rob, the newbie, and Zoe, the good girl, Madison, who seemed to be in her element here, asked the people around her generously, what should a girl do to get a drink in this kind of situation? Follow me. A girl who obviously recognized Madison's identity enthusiastically took her hand and led her inside. The fraternity members who also noticed that a beautiful female star had come to the party started discussing it excitedly. This is the right party. Madison Montgomery is such a hottie. Anyone wanna try to take her down? I haven't f'd a Hollywood star yet. Dalton, you are not on the same level as him. You can't catch big fish if you don't shake the bait. Dalton touched the powder in his pocket that he had prepared specially for this hunting party, and took action with full confidence. At the same time, at the party, under the leadership of veteran driver Madison, rookies Rob and Zoe quickly integrated into the party. Under the influence of the environment, Zoe was no longer so restrained. She put her hands on Rob's shoulders and danced with her nice figure with enthusiasm and a hint of shyness. This made Kyle, who spotted Zoe at first sight not far away and looked at her for a long time and was also the leader of the Brotherhood this time, a little depressed. "Where's Madison?" Rob asked as he held Zoe's slender waist, enjoying her youthful temptation. As a Hollywood star, even though she is out of fashion, Madison is definitely the focus of the crowd in New Orleans, a place far away from the entertainment center, especially at a party with a group of young college students. Coupled with her beautiful face and attractive figure, she attracted many people to come and chat with her along the way. Originally, Rob was still consciously staring at Madison. Who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, the other person disappeared into the crowd? "Madison? I didn't see it." Zoe looked around and shook her head. "What's wrong? Is there a problem?" She noticed that her boyfriend frowned slightly and asked in confusion. "Of course there is a problem," Rob explained. "Being a single woman and a female star, there are always all kinds of troubles." Zoe, who is essentially kind, immediately said, "Then let's go find her." Rob nodded, took Zoe's hand and went straight to the second floor. On the other side, Madison, who ran to the corridor to smoke, was not interested in Dalton, who came to chat with her. She just treated him as a waiter and asked him to bring a glass of wine. As a result, the Great Salem Witch was knocked down by a packet of sleeping pills. Second floor. When Rob brought Zoe up, the first thing he smelled was a strange smell mixed with tobacco and sweat. Rob, knowing that a lot of that stuff was smoked here, lamented the rottenness of the young man. At the same time, he ignored the sounds of men and women fighting in the rooms on both sides of the aisle and walked quickly inside. Soon, he saw a group of young men wearing fraternity t-shirts excitedly leading the unconscious Madison to the deepest part of the floor. "Hey! What are you doing?" Rob ran over to stop it. A horny fraternity member stopped Rob and said in an unhappy tone, "Get out. Don't meddle in other people's business." Rob said coldly, "You are committing a crime, do you know that?" "Bullshit. Get out of here if you don't want to get beaten. You Asian monkeys should go back and read your books instead of playing the hero here." The fraternity youth who stopped Rob was a member of the school basketball team. He was 1.9 meters tall and looked down at Rob. His huge hand was grabbing his collar, as if he was going to eat him. Zoe saw this and was about to go over to help. As a result, after a moment, the young man who was so arrogant before began to sweat profusely. "Your mouth stinks." The moment he arrived in America, Rob, who had already grasped the essence of it, pulled out the Glock from his waist, pointed the muzzle at the young man's chest, and sneered, "Repeat what you just said." Faced with American-style IAI, perhaps the Chinese aunties and uncles don't care, and may even have the courage to try to snatch the gun. But as Native Americans, we dare not have any outrageous thoughts. "Oh my God!" The young man, who was sobered up instantly by the fright, subconsciously raised his hands, no longer as arrogant as before. Not to mention him, even O'Neill would have to surrender if he came here. Who would have thought that people who came to the party would carry guns with them? Unfortunately, Rob, who had anticipated this and made full preparations, took it and said, "Sing Happy Sheep and Big Big Sheep 100 times. "What? I almost forgot that this is not China." "Then kneel down." Now the young man understood and did it obediently. At this time, the other fraternity members who noticed something was wrong behind them turned their heads and saw a gun pointed at them. "No. Hey bro, calm down. We can discuss this. Don't shoot." Under the gunpoint, all disobedience will be suppressed. Regardless of whether they were drunk or had too much S*X on their minds, everyone sobered up at this moment. "Zoe, go get Madison," Rob said. Zoe quickly ran over to pick up the unconscious Madison. Dalton watched his prey being taken away. He was not sure if he was in a clear mind or something, but he suggested unwillingly, "Brother, if you want, you can join us. We'll let you be the first one." This time, Rob didn't need to say anything. The angry Zoe kicked Dalton hard between the legs. The sound of eggs cracking was heard. Dalton fell to his knees, holding his crotch in agony. As the men present were feeling the same way, Kyle, who had been paying attention to Zoe, also ran over. "Guys, what happened?" "Oh. Just relax, bro, relax, I mean no harm." Before Kyle could see what was happening, he saw Rob's Glock and subconsciously raised his hands and said quickly. Rob didn't intend to actually shoot, and explained, "It's obvious that your companions used drugs to knock my friend unconscious, and they wanted to hurt her in turn. So, Are all the people recruited into the Brotherhood now scum? Kyle's face looked very ugly, especially when he saw Madison's unconscious face who was supported by Zoe. He believed it all. The Brotherhood is a bunch of arrogant scum. Zoe added coldly. Kyle was no longer in the mood to refute. He looked at the fraternity members, his eyes full of anger, and he shouted. Chapter 8. Are you crazy? Do you know the consequences of doing this? Do you want to go to jail and sell your A? If something really happens, it will definitely not be a trivial matter, especially when Madison is a star. What awaits these people is only dropping out of school, going to jail, and spending the rest of their lives hanging around at the bottom of society. Their prestigious universities and fraternity backgrounds will no longer exist. It can be said that they are courting their own destruction. As the person in charge of the party, although Kyle did not participate in it, the ones who committed the crime were all members of the fraternity with him. When he faces the reprimand from the fraternity management, he will not be able to get away with it, and it will also affect his future career. This was definitely a bolt from the blue for him, who grew up in a slum community and was determined to change his class. If Rob hadn't had the pistol in his hand at that moment, he would have wanted to attack these incompetent guys. After hearing Kyle's angry rebuke, the fraternity members who were only concerned about the momentary pleasure finally realized the seriousness of the matter, and expressions of fear appeared on their faces. Go away. Rob waved his hand. The matter can come to an end here. Could it be that he really shot these guys and treated this world as Vice City? Besides, if these guys continue to stay here, Madison will probably twist them into pieces when she wakes up. I can be said to have saved their lives. As for whether these people will commit the same offense again, forget it. Based on Rob's understanding of these idiots, he would repeat that under the influence of alcohol and drugs, they are capable of doing such stupid things. A group of fraternity members didn't say a word and ran out in a panic, carrying Dalton, who was still covering his balls and in great pain. Kyle looked at them, then at Rob and the others. After a brief thought, he said sorry and turned to chase after Dalton and the others. He still needed to do the cleanup work. Rob looked at Kyle's back and thought that although he had taken your position as backup witch housekeeper, at least he hadn't turned you into a human jigsaw monster. This was the best ending. He put away his gun and helped Zoe drag the still drowsy Madison to an empty room. I'll get some wet towels. Rob asked Zoe to look after Madison while he went to look for her. After being busy for almost half an hour, Madison finally regained consciousness. She stood up, rubbed her dizzy head with her hand, and asked in confusion, "What's wrong with me?" Rob gave Zoe a look, and Zoe told him everything. FK. Madison's face was filled with rage, and the witch's power was leaking out uncontrollably. Bang! 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 The picture frames, tables, chairs, chandeliers, etc. in the room were instantly shattered to the ground. Calm down, Madison. Rob, who was almost disfigured by a flying fragment, quickly put his hand on Madison's shoulder. Fortunately, he had the foresight to let those idiots leave, otherwise, with Madison's temper, this place would definitely become a bloody slaughterhouse. Zoe also patiently persuaded him. This calmed Madison down. She put away her strength, looked around and asked, "Where are those bastards?" She had never suffered such a big loss before and she wanted to take revenge. "They've already run away," Zoe said. "Those guys have been punished by Rob. The one who drugged you had his balls kicked out by me. He'll never be able to hurt anyone again." "Indeed, I heard the sound of the eggs breaking clearly." Rob nodded. "Besides, Madison, there are a lot of people here," he said meaningfully. Madison's expression eased a little, and he finally listened to what was said. At this time, the lively party was still in full swing. After what happened, Madison was in no mood to stay here any longer. The three of them, having lost interest, returned together. Same night. In the flower garden next to the witch's house. Cordelia, who usually stays here alone to refine herbs, now has an uninvited guest. She is the supreme leader of the witch group and the most powerful supreme witch. She is also Cordelia's mother. This most irresponsible supreme witch in history has always ignored the witch career and lived a self-indulgent life all over the world. But tonight I showed up here unexpectedly. Just as the two were engaging in a conversation about the love of mother and filial piety of daughter, the sound of the house door opening was heard. The supreme witch Fiona turned her head and looked. Even though there was an obstacle, her gaze seemed to still be able to fall on the person who had arrived. She just smiled faintly and said, 2 young and energetic witches and a boy. He was forced here by Myrtle. He is the one who survived a disaster under the power of the witch. Haha, Myrtle always makes her presence felt all the time. Cordelia said coldly, it's not a so-called statement, but a fact. Myrtle is also thinking about the witch career. After all, who makes the supreme witch only care about herself? I'm starting to take care of the young witches now. Fiona, who only regarded Rob as a minor incident and no longer cared about him, said to Cordelia in a tone that could not be refused. It's settled then. Starting tomorrow, I will also join in the teaching of the young witches. The council will agree to this once they know about it. Cordelia could not refuse the supreme witch teaching the young witches, both for public and private reasons. Only. Looking at Fiona's departing back, Cordelia looked a little worried. Based on her understanding of her mother, she was definitely not the type of person who would suddenly change her personality and become serious and responsible. Rob, who had no idea that he was mentioned by the Supreme Witch, returned to his bedroom after sending Madison and Zoe back to their room. Looking back on my first day in New Orleans, I have to say it was a very fulfilling one. He met a group of witches, bought a pistol, got the cross and other exorcism items for free, and finally rescued Madison as a hero. Everything is going according to my plan. The preparations for dealing with supernatural matters are almost complete. Especially a strong helper. Since I helped Madison avoid humiliation this time, it would be easy to ask the other party for help. Yes, the helper Rob had wanted all along was Madison. As for my girlfriend Zoe, should I ask her to kill those supernatural creatures? Among the others, Nan's combat power is almost 0. Queenie, the human-shaped voodoo doll, has good combat power, but unfortunately he is not familiar with the other party and it is difficult to improve the relationship quickly in a short period of time, not to mention Cordelia and even Fiona. After all the calculations, Madison, who had suffered this disaster, was the most suitable one. Although this BCH is full of B, her fighting ability is indeed extraordinary as she can play with a bus weighing several tons like a yo-yo with just a wave of her hand. Anyway, I'm not competing for the Supreme Witch, so I don't have to worry about Madison changing her mind. Besides, if it really doesn't work, just sacrifice your masculinity. Chapter 9. The next morning. Spalding got up early and went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast for everyone. Rob, the lack-spirited manservant, almost stood up with the witches. When he pushed the door open, he saw Madison, who was dressed as exquisitely as ever, walking out. She smiled and waved at him, saying, "Hey, Rob, good morning." Rob responded, "Good morning, Madison." The other party was in a good mood at the moment, and didn't seem to be affected at all by what happened last night. As expected of someone who has been in Hollywood since childhood, his psychological adjustment ability is extraordinary. Thinking of this, Rob greeted Zoe who was following behind him, and took the opportunity to give her a passionate kiss. Madison on the side did not avoid it, but just watched it all with a pout. The three of them went downstairs together. When he arrived at the restaurant, Rob, who had just realized that he was working, went to the kitchen and started helping out. Spalding glanced at him without any reaction. Rob had to say that he was lucky to have a capable boss who really wanted his subordinates to be lazy and do nothing. Not only that, but even though he did very little, he received far more praise than Spalding. For Rob, having such a servant is definitely a double blessing. "Rob, today's breakfast is delicious." Ignoring Spalding who was working hard beside him, Madison looked at Rob with admiration on her face. Rob still couldn't take credit for other people's work without batting an eyelid. He shrugged, "Thanks for the compliment. Spalding basically made breakfast today. I just cut up the fruit." Madison smiled and said, "I was talking about fruit. No wonder it tastes so delicious today. Rob, you cut it so artistically." "Spalding, you should learn from Rob when you have time. Don't make the food look so ugly all the time. God, the cutting is so artistic." Rob himself didn't know that his 2 casual slashes could have such an effect. However, since a beautiful woman took the initiative to praise him, he, who was not a straight man, naturally responded, "Thank you for the compliment, I will continue to work hard." Bang! The 2 porcelain plates made a crisp collision sound. Spalding, who was clearing the empty plates, couldn't stand the nonsense of this couple any longer, so he slammed the plate in his hand and was about to leave with a gloomy face. Madison, who has always disliked him, will not tolerate him, Spalding, losing your temper is not a good thing. As a service object, is it a problem for me to ask you to improve your cooking skills? If you have any opinions, then speak up and let me hear them. I almost forgot, Spalding, your tongue is broken. How did it happen? Did you do something bad with your tongue? Or is your licking skill just bad? Spalding glared at Madison and stormed off. Don't go, Spalding. Let me see the root of your tongue, maybe I can use magic to help you recover. Madison looked at Spalding's back with a playful look. She didn't turn back until the other person disappeared. She raised her beautiful eyebrows towards Rob and said, there is only one person for the position of witch steward. When I get rid of Spalding one day, Rob, remember to thank me. Rob didn't expect Madison to have such thoughts about Spalding. He said helplessly, thank you for your kindness, Madison. But I am still very satisfied with my current position. He didn't want to serve from morning till night like Spalding. But BCH Madison's fighting power is indeed strong. Not only physically, but also spiritually. If you take such a person out, everyone would be scared, whether it's a human or a ghost. Rob became more determined in his thoughts. The young witches have all arrived at the restaurant. Just as everyone was eating breakfast and watching the morning news on TV. The loud sound of high heels rang out. Hey, girls, I will be your replacement for Cordelia in this morning's class. Fiona, the fashionably dressed supreme witch in a black dress, officially appeared. She said decisively, I've read all your information. It's simply a pipe dream for you to make a name for yourself in this crappy magic school, not to mention that my daughter doesn't even know how to teach you. We're going to do a field trip today, so get ready to go. Who are you? Madison frowned, unhappy with Fiona's tone of devaluing herself and others. Are you an old man who escaped from a mental hospital? Before he could finish his words, Rob quickly pulled him back, stopping him from speaking. This girl is really brave sometimes. Facing a supreme witch who is now most afraid of aging, he dares to rub salt into the wound and call her an old woman. Isn't this just courting death? But Madison was not wrong. Rob looked at Fiona. Although she was wearing designer clothes and had all kinds of expensive cosmetics on her face, it still couldn't hide her aging. Ordinary people are still unwilling to accept this reality. Not to mention the supreme witch who possesses great power. Rob didn't dare to look at it any longer, lest his expression reveal his inner thoughts. When Fiona heard Madison speak, she was ready to teach her a lesson. However, when she saw Rob stop him, her hand stopped. Stupid and cheap little witch, sometimes you should learn from educated people instead of being as illiterate as those be in Hollywood. Fiona sneered at Madison, then turned to Rob and said in a better tone, I like polite young people. Rob, right? Now I understand why you are here. Work hard, and while serving the witches, you will also gain rewards that ordinary people never have. I'll try my best, Rob said respectfully. Fiona nodded, then snapped her fingers. To the astonishment of the young witches, the candles on all the candlesticks in the hall instantly started to burn on their own. Now act, young witches. After saying that, she walked out. When she passed by Queenie, she paused, looked at the ugly orange t-shirt covered with grease and dirt, and said with disgust, oh my god, change your clothes. Wear something black. Looking down at her t-shirt, Queenie asked unhappily until Fiona walked away, who the hell is this guy? Zoe, who had just arrived, said she didn't know. Madison, who was also unhappy, looked at Rob. At this time, Nan suddenly smiled and said, she is the Supreme Witch. The Supreme Witch? Instantly, all the witches except Rob were shocked. The legendary figure that Principal Cordelia told them about yesterday now appears before them alive? Thinking of this, everyone followed Fiona's request and changed into black clothes without further delay. During this time, Madison, who was almost taught a lesson, deliberately pinched Rob's palm and gave him a look full of affection and gratitude. Chapter 10. Fiona takes the young witches on a field trip to Pop Springs, a former witch sanctuary. Cordelia also left the house, apparently to meet her husband. Only Rob and Spalding were left in the entire witch academy. When he wasn't working, Spalding would lock himself in the attic and play with a room full of exquisite dolls that would make little girls scream with delight. Rob didn't interrupt. He first returned to his room and took a nap to refresh himself, then he continued to read through various information he found on the internet about places in New Orleans where paranormal events might have occurred. In order to avoid being taken in, he had no choice but to deal with these legendary creatures, no matter how unwilling he was. I hope there will be some gains. Rob wiped the Glock and soaked the bullet in holy water like in the movies, although the so-called holy water looked like ordinary water to him, hoping that American IAI would be as reassuring as always. Finally, after saying a few Chinese-style prayers to God and checking that it was already noon, Rob went downstairs to reward his stomach. Not long after, the sound of girls talking could be heard outside the house. "Hey, Rob!" Zoe pushed the door open and greeted Rob intimately. "Hey, Rob!" Madison, who followed closely behind, took off her sunglasses and shouted to Rob in the same tone. Zoe glanced back at her. Queenie, who was watching all this, pushed Madison aside speechlessly, came to Rob and said, "Rob, is there anything to eat? I'm so tired after walking all morning." "Of course, I just happened to prepare some." Rob said, "By the way, where is the Supreme Witch? Hasn't she come back yet?" Zoe came over to help and said, "She left for something." Rob understood. In the following time, the group of young witches had a fairly satisfactory Rob-style Chinese meal and then dispersed. There aren't many courses at the Witch Academy, which means everyone has plenty of free time to do what they like. Nan took the book and the soundproofing earphones and went to a secluded corner to read. Not feeling full after lunch, Queenie ordered some popcorn takeout and planned to spend the afternoon watching a black movie. Zoe was the most serious among all the witches. She returned to her room and began to review her witch knowledge seriously. She wanted to solve her physical problem as soon as possible so that she could give her boyfriend loving care. As for Madison, according to her usual style, she would probably go to a bar or go shopping in a designer store. But at this time he stayed beside Rob, chatting with him about random things. It just so happens that Rob is also looking for her. "Are you interested in going out for a walk together this afternoon?" he inquired. Madison's eyes lit up, and an excited smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. "Is this an invitation for a date? So direct? Girl, don't you know I have a girlfriend?" Rob quickly said, "It's just an invitation between friends. You know this is my first time in New Orleans, and I need a guide to take me around here." "No problem. I'll be your intimate tour guide from now on." Madison emphasized the word intimate and then deliberately asked, "Do I need to tell Zoe about this?" "Don't bother, let her study in peace." "I understand." At this point, Madison stepped out with her long, straight, and even white legs, turned her head over, and whispered softly in Rob's ear with her sexy red lips, temptingly saying, "I don't mind. Rob. Depend on this goblin." Rob chanted the Great Compassion mantra frantically in his mind and quickly cleaned up his spiritual altar. Ignoring what he just said, he didn't forget that there was one more thing he had to explain. He finally said with a little shyness and embarrassment, "Well, I don't have much money on me, so I'll have to let you pay for everything when we go out." Madison. Although she is a former movie star, Madison, who started acting at a young age, still has quite a bit of savings. Even though most of it was taken away by her unscrupulous parents. "Of course I can afford to treat you." What surprised Madison was that when she went out, she was always treated to hospitality by men, but this was the first time she heard someone wanting to treat her with a clear conscience, especially when she was going out for fun. But just like when you like someone, you can always find a suitable explanation for any of their behaviors. After last night's drugging and this morning's reminder, and considering Rob's handsome and novel oriental face, Madison agreed to pay for him to have S*X with her. "This is the first time I ask a boy out, so it's a good experience." With such a mood, Madison, who was still dressed in a cool black dress after being praised by Rob, followed him and started to wander around New Orleans according to the tourist map given by him. It was fine at first. They visited some famous New Orleans attractions along the way. However, as time went by, Madison began to feel suspicious as she saw that Rob was no longer interested in those exquisite buildings with a long history, but instead kept visiting all kinds of strange places and even cemeteries. Until Rob pulled her to the gate of the famous Lafayette Cemetery No. 1. Seeing the gloomy atmosphere even though the sun was shining brightly, Madison, who was completely different from what she had imagined, finally couldn't help asking, "Rob, why did you come to a place like this?" After working for a long time, he didn't encounter any supernatural events. It was a waste of so many stories on the internet. Rob, who had experienced them personally, let out a sigh of relief and said, "I forgot to tell you, I'm a fan of the supernatural." I came out today to try my luck and see if I can see a ghost or something. I heard that Lafayette Cemetery No. 1 is the most haunted place, and there are legends about vampires and zombies, so I wanted to come and see it for myself. Madison understood. I didn't expect you to have such a hobby. Although it is unpopular to like the supernatural, compared with the men she had seen in the past who liked all kinds of suicidal things, backdoor dealings, exposure, women's clothing, and other special fetishes, Rob's hobby was still within the normal range. Madison asked curiously, "Do you really believe in ghosts, vampires, werewolves, ghost riders with fire on their heads, and the like? Since legendary witches can exist, then these legendary guys can naturally exist as well." Rob pointed to Madison as the best proof. "That makes sense." Madison, whose interest was aroused by Rob, looked around with great interest, contrary to her previous impatience. "If you really want to, we can catch one and bring him back to scare Queenie and the others." When Madison thought of Queenie, who always opposed him, rolling on the ground in fear, he couldn't help but take action immediately. "Good idea." Rob clapped his hands. He was still thinking about how to convince the other party, but he didn't expect the other party to be so proactive. They are indeed American young people with a tradition of seeking death. Chapter 11. The cemeteries in New Orleans are famous throughout America and even the world. Because most of the ground beneath the surface is swamp, the New Orleans area mostly uses the hanging coffin burial form on the ground. The cemetery is filled with various types of buildings, including pyramids, churches, and castles. Together, they look like a city of the dead. Almost every family member shares the same cemetery. New coffins are placed on the upper level of the cemetery, and the lower level is where the remains of all ancestors are placed. It is truly a life of generations living together. It can be said that if someone hates a New Orleans native so much that he wants to grind his ancestors to ashes, it is definitely a very easy thing to do. Lafayette Cemetery No. 1 is one of the oldest cemeteries in New Orleans and one of the most famous cemeteries in the world. Here, people can find the graves of many historical celebrities. Among them was Mary Laverne, the voodoo queen whose tombstone people kept drawing X's on. In order to protect the graves and tombstones, Lafayette Cemetery No. 1 is not open to the public most of the time. It is in a state of closure now. With the experience of climbing over the wall of Pop Springs Sanctuary in the morning, the experienced Madison took the initiative to take Rob to a remote wall without saying a word, and climbed over it easily in no time. Where would the ghost be? Looking at the cemetery that looked very eerie against the backdrop of rows of tall tombs, Madison looked around eagerly. "I hope you can still be so brave when you really see a ghost." Finding that he was not as brave as a girl, Rob touched the cross in his arms, looked at the already dim sky, and combined with his previous experience of not finding anything, he said, "Hauntings mostly happen at night, and the sun is about to set, so let's wait a little longer. Also, we can take this opportunity to wander around the cemetery. I heard there are many vampire legends here." "Vampire?" Madison's eyes lit up again. "Compared to a ghost, I would rather meet a vampire noble who is well dressed, elegantly spoken, has a handsome face, and has rich life experience accumulated over hundreds of years." "But he'll suck your blood," Rob joked. Madison was getting more and more excited. "You can try it. I heard that the pleasure during blood-sucking is 100 times stronger than before." Unlike the reserved Orientals, Rob was used to the bold and unrestrained style of Western girls and continued without being affected, "Do you want me to prepare a large bag of paper for you?" "Of course." Madison blinked, "And by the way, you pulled the vampire away from me when my heart was about to stop beating. It's not worth dying after just enjoying it once." Rob said in a serious manner, "No problem. Once we catch a vampire, we'll do as you say." The two of them chatted with each other in their unspoken voices, which dispelled a lot of the eerie and strange atmosphere of the City of the Dead. Night falls. Lafayette Cemetery No. 1 looks even more terrifying than it does during the day. Madison was no longer as nonchalant as when he first arrived. Whenever she heard any movement around her, she would look quickly and nervously. Even the powerful BCH is like this, let alone Rob, who is just an ordinary person. He is not like some novel protagonists who are born without fear. He would get scared to the point of his heart racing just like watching a horror movie, so why would he take the initiative to get involved in these creepy things unless he had no other choice? Rob looked at Madison, who was leaning against him, their hands tightly clasped together. "I thought it was a good decision to call for help this time. If nothing else, having one more person around you means a great deal of psychological comfort. In this way, the two of them stayed in the empty cemetery for an hour, terrified. Then. That's all. Apart from the occasional harassment from a group of mosquitoes, there were no ghosts, vampires, or zombies to be seen. It looks like I won't be able to get my vampire boyfriend. Madison shrugged with a tone that was both regretful and relaxed. Rob was very nervous before he discovered the supernatural power, and felt very disappointed after he found out that there was no supernatural power. He wanted to curse in his heart. He glanced at the Book of Containment, which had remained calm. Isn't it said to be a haunted holy place? Why is there not even a ghost? Or is it that I came at the wrong time and those ghosts, vampires, and the like are not interested in coming out? Whatever the reason, Rob could only leave with Madison in a lack of interest. The two went to a French restaurant called Muriel for dinner. Although the French food here is good, it is rumored that the former owner of this restaurant, a man named Pierre-Antoine Leperdieu Jordan, was addicted to gambling and ended up losing everything. He committed suicide here and his ghost has been wandering here ever since, and there is still no trace of him. With his last hope, Rob came to another haunted place that was rumored to be haunted on the internet, the Montelion Hotel at 214 Royal Street in the French Quarter. When they arrived here, Madison looked at Rob in surprise, thought about it, and went in with him hand in hand without refusing. Using Madison's money, the two of them booked a room. Just as the two were about to take the elevator to go upstairs, the elevator door that had just closed opened, and a man wearing a coat that was not suitable for the season, with his head lowered and a hurried look on his face, walked out quickly without even looking ahead, and then bumped into Rob. Rob is fine, nothing happened. Instead, the man in the coat was knocked to the ground. Sir, are you okay? Rob subconsciously wanted to help him. But the man in the coat got up without saying a word, and without paying any attention to Rob, he walked out as fast as a rocket. This guy. Rob withdrew his hand, shook his head, and was about to walk into the stairs when he saw a suitcase dropped on the ground. It seems that this is the thing that the person just held under his armpit. Rob picked it up, turned around and shouted kindly, "Sir, you dropped something. I didn't expect that it would have been better if I hadn't said anything." As soon as I said it, the man in the coat ran even faster and disappeared in a flash. What's wrong with this guy? He doesn't even want his own things. Rob, who was holding a suitcase in his hand, was completely confused. Madison, who saw this, suddenly asked, "Have you ever thought that there might be a bomb in the bag?" Ah! Rob was confused at first, then horrified. Oh my God! I almost forgot that this is America. Thinking of the man's hasty escape just now, he subconsciously wanted to throw away the bulging suitcase in his hand, but then he thought, what if some button was touched during the collision and it exploded? Rob, who was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat, quickly looked at Madison, wanting to ask this Native American who had seen a lot of things for him. "Open it and take a look first." Madison, who rarely retreated first, said in a tone of indifference. Chapter 12. Inspired by Madison's calm expression, Rob carefully unzipped the luggage bag. After a quick look, he immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Not a bomb. What's this? Seeing that there was no danger, Madison curiously reached into the bag and took out the things inside, and said in surprise, "An arm? Looks interesting." Rob looked. Madison was playing with a golden arm that reached up to the elbow, had 5 distinct fingers, and was engraved with beautiful patterns. It looked like a work of art. Afterwards, Madison was even more excited to put her right glove into the hollow golden arm. Although it was a bit reluctant, I still did it. How is it? Is it beautiful? Madison stretched out her golden arms with satisfaction and asked Rob. Looking at Madison, whose one arm was normal and the other had turned into a golden arm, Rob said sincerely, "It really has a strange beauty. Gold always makes people feel good. Is this solid gold or has it been painted with gold paint?" Rob asked, tapping his fingers on King's arm. Although he knew about gold, he had only seen it on TV, so he had no idea what gold was made of. Should I learn from those people in movies and TV shows and bite with my teeth? Rob looked at the golden arm on Madison's right hand, thought about it and shook his head. It's too low and it damages your image. If asked whether US dollar bills are authentic, Madison can answer, but she has no idea whether gold is authentic. Just ask the jewelry store. But seeing how that person just now didn't show any reluctance to leave, I guess it's not real gold. After having fun, Madison took off the gold arm and said. Rob nodded first, then frowned. Regardless of whether it is real gold or not, this golden arm is also a good work of art. No matter how anxious that person was, he wouldn't just leave this behind and run away. I always feel like something is wrong. Could it be stolen? He couldn't help but ask, wait here for a while? Maybe the man will come back to get it. I don't want to waste my time on insignificant people. Besides, I just reminded him, but he still doesn't want it. Then this golden arm is ours. Madison's appetite was bigger than Rob thought. Let's check it. If it's real gold, melt it and we split it. If not, just hang it in the room as a decoration. Rob, this is probably a lot of money. Reminded of the last sentence, Rob nodded in agreement. As he had to ask a woman to pay for his shopping today, he really needed some money. Damn America, nothing can work without money. Rob took the golden arm, reattached it, and continued to take the elevator upstairs with Madison. Despite the interruption just now, he did not forget the purpose of his trip. The sword of Damocles for 10 days is still hanging over my head. If he couldn't find it here, Rob would have no choice but to go to the swamps near New Orleans and try his luck while praying that he wouldn't be fed to alligators. Hotel Montelion. As a famous haunted hotel in New Orleans, it is very famous on the internet. Many guests have reported seeing ghosts here. Not only that, the hotel cafeteria door, elevator, and even some objects in the room would occasionally move strangely. There's even a hallway that drops the temperature as guests walk through it and reveals images of children playing. These strange phenomena can usually be seen after 8 o'clock in the evening. After experiencing a blow during the day, Rob no longer believed such statements on the internet. But since he was already here, he decided to give it a try. When I arrived at the room, I saw that it was just past 8 o'clock. Rob was thinking about where to try his luck. There was a sudden sound of a door slamming shut. Rob's heart tightened and he turned quickly, only to see Madison fall into his arms. Two white, slender arms wrapped around his neck like snakes. Seeing Madison approaching with fiery eyes, Rob was stunned and said quickly, Madison, did you misunderstand something? Misunderstanding? People say that Asian boys are shy and honest, but I think you are completely different, Rob. You invited me to the hotel so late at night, so who doesn't know what you are thinking? Madison said with a seductive look, but she didn't stop her movements at all. Wait, I'm here for serious business. Isn't this the business we are doing now? Seeing that the enemy's attack was fierce and their army was about to be defeated, suddenly, the chair next to me moved strangely. Rob was startled and quickly held Madison down, saying with a serious expression, be careful. There is something unusual here. As he spoke, he took out the cross with his left hand and held the Glock with his right hand, his face showing excitement and worry, ready to take action at any time. What's wrong? Madison was confused after being rejected. Rob pointed to the chair and said, the chair just moved by itself. Maybe you are dazzled. Before Madison could finish her words, right before her eyes, there was a bang and the painting on the wall suddenly fell down. She was startled. But this is just the beginning. Not just this one. The other picture frames containing oil paintings on the wall were clearly not moved, but they fell off the wall one after another, as if an invisible hand was moving them. Madison tensed up instantly and hurried back to Rob, saying with some panic in her tone, Rob, I know what you mean. Although she had boasted before that she would catch ghosts and even vampires as her male lover, she couldn't help but panic when she encountered such a thing for the first time. Don't worry, I'm fully prepared. Although he was also panicking, Rob still stepped forward and took the lead. In the following time, the atmosphere in the room became more and more weird. The chair began to move again, making a sizzling noise. The cup flew around in the air and finally fell to the ground, breaking into pieces. The chandelier above the head was also swinging wildly, making the entire room flicker. Is it going to show up? Seeing the noise in the room getting louder and louder, Rob, with sweaty palms, stared closely at his surroundings. However, after waiting for a long time, the other party still did not show up. What's going on? The atmosphere has been set to this point, it's time for the real protagonist to appear. Rob looked at Madison with some doubts, and saw that the other party was also very nervous. When he was about to look away, he suddenly realized something. Chairs moved, picture frames fell, chandeliers swayed. Take things with your mind. No wonder. I mean, Why is there no response from my Book of Containment? Madison. Rob looked fiercely at Madison, who looked nervous but eager to try. I almost forgot you were an actor. You acted well. How come I never realized you have such good acting skills before? As soon as the words fell, everything in the room returned to calm. Chapter 13. The room was filled with a weird and scary atmosphere just a second ago. The next second, it was broken by laughter. After being exposed by Rob, Madison stopped pretending. The nervous expression on her face changed. She put her hands on her hips and smiled happily like a little devil after having succeeded in a prank. Haha. Rob, you are really scared. How is it? I am a good ghost, right? Rob glared at her with a sullen look. Come on, smile Rob, I'm helping you realize your unfulfilled dream all day. You can't go back empty-handed, right? It's good to feel the supernatural atmosphere. Witches with supernatural powers are also supernatural. Thank you. Rob rolled his eyes. I'm here to kill the ghost. Am I here to kill you now? At this moment, he missed the well-behaved and obedient Zoe so much. Madison, who acted according to her own preferences, was sometimes so speechless. It's not that you can't kill me, right? Suddenly, Madison curled her red lips, stretched out her hands, and approached Rob again like a beautiful snake. Her hot breath hit Rob's face, and she said teasingly, to put a perfect end to today, how about an exorcist FGA witch? Exorcists versus witches? Are you sure this war doesn't mean something else? Rob was about to refuse with righteous indignation. Suddenly, the windows in the room made loud clang and clang sounds. Rob reluctantly turned his face to the side and said speechlessly, Come again? Do you think I won't do it again a second time? What? Madison, who had now focused all her attention on Rob, responded with a somewhat rapid breath. Rob was about to explain, when suddenly, an even louder crash was heard. Boom! The door that was originally closed seemed to be crushed at this moment and fell to the ground. Looking at all this, Rob frowned and said, Madison, this is a bit too much. Not to mention that you have to pay for the door when you check out, do you want to broadcast it live for outsiders to see? Live broadcast? I'm not interested. Madison, who was awakened by the loud noise, said as she looked back. FK. Who did this? She asked in surprise as she looked at the collapsed door. You didn't do that. Of course. It's already this late, why would I cause trouble? It made so much sense that Rob believed it immediately. How do you explain the current situation? Rob was about to go out to check the situation. The clang and clang sounds from the window became more and more intense. Not only that, even though we were inside the hotel, there was an extremely strong gale blowing in from outside the door, which blew the tables, chairs, dishes, and other objects in the room all over the place. Faintly, a voice mixed in with the wind floated in and said, Hiss. Rob, did you hear anything? No longer acting, Madison, whose face turned a little pale, tightly grasped Rob's arm with her slender hands painted with nail polish and asked nervously. Rob listened carefully. It seems so. Hiss, who took my golden arm, hiss, who on earth? Golden arm. Rob blurted out in surprise. As soon as the words fell. All movement is first stillness. Then, bang bang bang. The windows could no longer bear the weight, and piece after piece of glass shattered to the ground, with strong winds pouring in from outside. The wind outside the door became even more violent. In an instant, the place where Rob and Madison were was like being hit by a hurricane, and everything was blown up. Rob held on to Madison tightly, and with the weight of the two of them, he was not blown away. Not only that, as the wind became stronger, the sound in it became clearer, hiss. Who took my golden arm? Who is it? Who is it? The sound, like the roar of a beast coming from hell, was getting louder and louder. In the end, it echoed in Rob and the other man's ears like a bell. Rob, it seems like we've really run into a ghost this time. Madison, who was experiencing such a scene for the first time, forced a smile. It's not like that, it's real. Rob affirmed, feeling the scarlet light emitting from the Book of Shelter in his mind. He glanced at the luggage bag that had been thrown aside when he and Madison stood side by side. Unexpectedly, the haunted place in the end was not the place I found on the internet, but the golden arm I accidentally obtained from a stranger. This can be considered an unexpected success. Hiss. Who is it? Who on earth is it? The creepy screams continued. Just when Rob and the other two were beginning to get used to it, a voice that was no longer crazy but made them even more terrified suddenly exploded in their ears. Found it? So, it was you, who stole my golden arm. Madison shuddered all over, and now she knew what had caused it. She quickly said, Rob, why don't you return the golden arm to the other party? I'm afraid it's too late. Rob stared at the door. There, a figure was squeezing in. Snap, snap, snap. The heavy footsteps were getting closer. It looks like it wants to kill us and then take the golden arm. This time Rob was really serious and quickly took out the two major weapons of science and theology. Soon, the owner of the footsteps walked into the room. How disgusting! As Madison commented, Rob looked and saw a female corpse that had been buried in the ground. Its body had rotted away completely and maggots were wriggling inside it. It walked in step by step. Its right forearm is missing. As expected, the golden arm was originally pressed here. Rob swallowed nervously and tried to communicate with the other party. I said we are not the ones who stole your golden arm, do you believe it? The female corpse looked straight at Rob with her blood-red eyes, opened her rotten mouth, and roared, where's my golden arm? Take, my golden arm, damn it! Rob was frightened by being stared at. Since communication was ineffective, he decided to just start fighting. Bang! 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 He quickly took out his knock, and like his idol, the American policeman, with murderous intent in his heart, he emptied the magazine of his pistol in just a few breaths. Although his hands were shaking a little, all the bullets hit the female corpse at close range. He looked at the female corpse who had been staring at him before, suddenly falling to the ground, with bullet holes all over her head and torso, and rotten flesh splattered everywhere. Rob quickly changed the magazine and looked over. Did you finish it? No. Madison, who has witch blood, did not sense the disappearance of the female corpse and quickly reminded. Sure enough, the female corpse, who had been shot so many times, raised her chest straight up from the ground. As the bullets were squeezed out and hit the ground, its eyes, as empty as the abyss, were once again aimed at Rob and roared, "Give me back, my golden arm." Chapter 14. Depend on. This can't be killed. You should know that the bullets of Rob's pistol have been soaked in holy water. Thinking of the priest who swore yesterday that he had performed dozens of exorcisms in his life, the holy objects blessed by him were definitely the nemesis of the supernatural. Rob, who didn't believe it, continued shooting. But apart from hindering the female corpse's actions, this has no other effect. He quickly turned around and asked Madison, what words from the Bible do the priests usually say when performing exorcisms? I had memorized some of it before, but now I'm so nervous that I've forgotten it all. Hey! Madison was a little confused. If you ask her about the fashion trends of each season, she can recite them by heart. But the Bible? She had almost forgotten it. I order you, to get out of here. Madison replied somewhat unconfidently. Rob was speechless. Madison glared at him unhappily and reminded him, I'm a witch. Forget it, let's just leave it at that. Rob shot the female corpse to the ground with another shot. While she was still trying to get up, he quickly took out the cross and the Bible, ran over to her with all his fear, and pressed the cross and the Bible against her body, announcing loudly, by God. Bah! In the name of God, I order you to get out of here and go back to hell. Rob, who had added some spice to what Madison had told him, kept repeating this to the corpse. It seems to have some effect. Hearing the female corpse's scream becoming more shrill, Rob was delighted and was about to make another effort. A strong wind blew. The impatient female corpse swung out her only intact left hand and slapped the cross and Bible in Rob's hands away. Rob was so frightened that he rolled and crawled away from him. Isn't it about the cross and the Bible? Priests are harming me. Movies and TV dramas are harming me. Seeing the female corpse crawling up from the ground alive and well and rushing towards him without any harm, Rob quickly called for help. Madison, it's up to you, boom. As soon as he finished speaking, a fierce invisible force emanated from Madison's palm. The female corpse could not resist and flew backwards with a bang, with her body deeply embedded in the wall. When I think about a woman turning into something as ugly as you after death, I feel genuinely sick. Madison curled her lips and said with disgust. With the buffer time of Rob's previous fight with the female corpse, she had come to her senses and calmed down, and was now able to truly display her strength. Roar! As if angered by Madison's words, the female corpse broke free from the wall in rage and rushed towards the former. Madison, who looked cool, was not panicked at all. He waved his hand and the female corpse flew backwards again. Boom! Boom! In the following time, the female corpse was the only one being beaten. Cool seeing this scene, Rob whistled excitedly, "Madison, that's it. You look the most charming now." "Really? So you like this style?" Madison took the time to wink at Rob and said seductively. But soon, the laughter of the two gradually faded away. Judging from the scene, it was indeed Madison who had the upper hand. Not only could the female corpse not get close to him, she was also being beaten the whole time. However, what made the two of them feel uneasy was that no matter how badly the female corpse was injured, even when Madison twisted its entire body into a knot with his mind, it still did not die and was even recovering from its injuries. It seemed that no matter how hard they tried, it could not be killed. "Rob, we have to think of other ways," Madison reminded with a frown. "A witch's power is not infinite. She couldn't keep using her abilities continuously for long." Realizing the seriousness of the problem, Rob kept repeating "I know" to himself, his eyes wandering around, trying hard to think of a solution. He first looked at the Book of Shelter, tried to summon it out, and pointed it at the female corpse, but there was no movement at all. Although this book claims to accommodate all supernatural beings, it does not seem to be ready to take any action. It is obvious that it is waiting for me to personally send the supernatural beings into its mouth. When one plan didn't work, Rob anxiously thought of other ways. "Rob, if it doesn't work, just retreat," Madison yelled. Seeing Madison ready to take action without forgetting to inform him, Rob thought it was worth their flirtation and was about to agree when he suddenly saw the suitcase containing the golden arm out of the corner of his eye. With a fierce look in his eyes, he took out the golden arm from his bag and rushed towards the female corpse while shouting, "Madison, help me hold it down." Madison gritted his teeth, stretched out his hands, and used his limited strength to hold the female corpse still. Rob successfully arrived in front of the female corpse and immediately used the golden arm in his hand as a hammer to smash the female corpse hard. "You want the golden arm? I'll give it back to you right now. I'll give it back to you." Every time he said "give it back to you," Rob waved his golden arm and slapped the female corpse hard. Snap! 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 Disgusting rotten flesh splattered everywhere. If someone who didn't know the truth saw this scene, they would think Rob was a perverted corpse torturer. But the female corpse who was the victim strangely stopped roaring. Instead, she stared at the golden finger and said excitedly, "My golden arm, my golden arm. It's your golden arm, it's your golden arm." Rob responded to every word the female corpse said, waving his long-desired golden arm at her. In the end, when Madison had loosened her grip due to exhaustion, the female corpse, who should have resumed movement, remained motionless and allowed Rob to do it. It was not until Rob had no more strength to wave his golden arms that he noticed that the female corpse had already been able to move. He was startled and was about to retreat when the female corpse suddenly stretched out her left arm slowly, pointed at the golden arm and said, "My golden arm." After saying this, its body collapsed and disappeared. Rob watched all this in a daze. Is this solved? He glanced at the golden arm in his hand. It was originally just an act of venting, but unexpectedly it had the opposite effect. The weakness of the female corpse who desires the golden arm is also the golden arm? Rob, who was still a novice in the supernatural, could only think so. But why is there no movement from the Book of Shelter? Rob looked at the Book of Shelter in his mind, which remained motionless. No, there are. Containment point, 10 on the page numbered 000, which is his own page. Rob unexpectedly discovered that the original containment point 0 had become 10. What is this? Was the female corpse killed or not? Rob shook his head. Although he was the owner of the Book of Shelter, there were still many things he didn't understand. At this time, Madison came over, looked at the place where the female corpse disappeared, and breathed a sigh of relief. "Good job, Rob. This is solved now." Rob saw this and sighed, "Solve it? Maybe." Chapter 15. After the female corpse disappeared, the dark and eerie atmosphere faded away. Bright lights illuminated the room again. If it weren't for the fact that the house was in ruins as if it had been hit by a hurricane and heavy objects had hit it, it would still be there. Rob thought it was just an illusion. He looked at his body. The disgusting rotten flesh that was originally on his body had now completely disappeared with the disappearance of the female corpse. This is definitely the most exciting scene I have experienced in the past 18 years. Madison, enjoying the afterglow of the war, rested her pointed chin on Rob's shoulder. Looking back on it now, it feels completely different. Refreshing. Rob, whose arm muscles were sore, had a question mark on his face. If you don't believe me, come and check it out. Madison raised her beautiful eyebrows. After counting the breaths, Rob. He finally understood that Queenie's evaluation of Madison was absolutely correct. He coughed, quickly withdrew his hand, and thanked her seriously. Thank you, Madison, this time. That is indeed the case. If Madison hadn't helped me this time, I would have been in a very bad situation. Every supernatural event is not easy to deal with. Especially when the exorcism item he had high hopes for was not durable. Madison waved his hand and said casually, I think it's just to repay the favor you did me last night. Also, if there's anything like this again, remember to call me. I don't want someone I like to be killed for no reason. Of course. No matter what Madison really thought, Rob was more than happy to have such a powerful helper. So, let's continue what we haven't finished yet. The stunningly beautiful Madison suddenly stretched out her index finger and lifted Rob's chin. Sister, I just thought you were reliable, why are you so out of touch all of a sudden? Is now the time to have a party? Fortunately, Rob didn't need to persuade him much, because other voices were heard outside the door. Oh my god! Are you being machine-gunned here? A passing guest noticed the door had fallen to the ground and looked inside curiously, and immediately exclaimed in shock. In fact, it's much more serious than machine gun fire. Looking at the normal face at the door, Rob said seriously. Logically speaking, there was such a big noise in the room just now. For example, the raging wind, the screams of the female corpse, Rob's gunshots, and so on. The people in the hotel should have heard it and come to investigate. But the problem is that for such a long time, it seemed as if nothing had happened to the outside world. It was not until the female corpse disappeared that the seemingly shielded room was finally discovered, and it soon caused a great sensation. 10 minutes later. In addition to hotel staff, there were a large number of curious guests in Rob and Madison's room. Sir, you mean the room is haunted and that's why it's like this? The hotel manager asked seriously. Yes, I'm sure of it. In addition, I can guarantee that my female companion and I did not smoke and did not have hallucinations. I swear in the name of God, what I said is absolutely true. In order to avoid a heavy fine and a series of troubles, Rob seriously said that he had indeed encountered a ghost and that everything happening now was unavoidable. Of course, he didn't mention the golden arm. Upon hearing this, the guests took photos in the room and uploaded them, saying excitedly, "Oh, that's so cool. Hey man, what does a female ghost look like? Is she pretty? How lucky! How come I didn't run into this?" It turns out that the rumor that this hotel is haunted is true. Great, I want to stay a few more days. Most of the people who are willing to stay here have heard of the hotel being haunted, and many people even come here from afar just to have a wonderful encounter with ghosts. Therefore, when they heard what Rob said, they did not look at him as a madman. Instead, they looked at Rob and the other two with envy, as if they wished they could replace them. This magical world! Rob muttered to himself, who was very surprised by the reaction of the onlookers. But soon, something even more magical happened. The hotel manager suddenly smiled and said, "Mr. Rob, we absolutely believe your experience. Montelion is a hotel with a long history. We have been welcoming not only the living but also the occasional ghost. Don't be afraid of these ghosts. They just like to play pranks. Just like what you just experienced, Mr. Rob. Look. They just made a mess of the room." Rob looked around the room that looked like it had been through a war, and there was something in his mind that he didn't know whether he should say or not. The hotel manager then said, "Mr. Rob, it is clear that the ghost caused all this. To express our apology, our hotel is willing to bear all the losses of this accident and change a new room for you too. Of course, we have a small request. We hope that you can describe your experience tonight in detail and allow us to use it. To ensure the authenticity, we hope that Miss Montgomery can come forward to certify it." At the end, the hotel manager looked at Madison and obviously recognized this actress who still had some fame in America. "No problem," Madison said nonchalantly. "But change rooms. After experiencing the incident with the female corpse, Rob and his companions, who were not as calm as the crowd, decided to go back to the witch school. Finally, after a series of interviews and photo-taking, Rob and Madison left through the gate amid the warm farewell of the hotel staff. Looking back at the brightly lit hotel, Rob couldn't help but ask, what are these guys thinking? Aren't they worried at all? Madison lit a cigarette and said, let alone ghosts, even if demons come, they will use each other's identities to make the hotel famous before they die. The Montelion Hotel is already famous for being haunted, so it would be a great benefit for them to have a new real haunted experience, backed by a Hollywood actress. This is also the reason why the hotel manager, when he saw the room was a mess, not only did he not get angry, but instead generously waived the fine. Madison puffed out smoke and said with the attitude of an experienced person, do you believe it? The room we are staying in tonight will definitely not be restored by the hotel. It will even be kept exactly as it is, as a living proof of haunting, attracting countless people to check in. In addition, my fame will also increase a lot, and I may even get a contract for a Hollywood horror movie. I believe it. Rob nodded heavily, and then he drew inferences from his own experience. Unfortunately, I'm the only man in the room. Otherwise, Madison, your fame would definitely be known all over America. Madison thought about it and immediately laughed so hard that she doubled over, that's true. This is such a FG world. Rob took the cigarette from Madison, took a puff, coughed several times, and then thought of a famous saying, and sighed, the world is dirty again. Chapter 16. When Rob and Madison returned to the Witch Academy, most of the house was dark. The management of the Witch Academy is very loose. We are all adults. Even the principal would not care if students do not return home at night, let alone classmates. Unless I haven't been contacted for several consecutive days. Of course, there are exceptions. Just like Zoe, when she saw Rob and Madison disappear during the day, she kept it in mind. When I saw the two of them coming back together in the evening, my sense of crisis increased even more. Fortunately, compared to Madison, Zoe is not so willful and is very receptive to Rob's words. After listening to the latter's explanation, she said nothing more, but just asked Rob to rest early. The reason for her behavior may be that as the Black Widow, she secretly blames herself for not being able to fulfill her duties as a girlfriend. Perhaps, we can try another method. Looking at Madison, who was only wearing black underwear and showing off her hot body, walking out of the bathroom after washing up, Zoe thought to herself and picked up her phone to look through her study materials. On the other side, Rob, who had also washed off the dust, opened his luggage bag and once again took out the golden arm that the female corpse had been obsessed with. After carefully checking and finding nothing unusual, he put it back. This is the Witch Academy, which not only gathers a group of young witches, but also has a powerful supreme witch in charge. Even if there is a follow-up to the golden arm, I don't need to worry too much. Rob summoned the Book of Containment again. After a busy day, it seems that the target has not been met, so I have to pay extra for serving at 10 shelter points. From what he understood, the shelter could be used to awaken abilities and improve one's physical and spiritual strength. As for abilities, I haven't even seen a shadow of them. It's the latter. Rob looked at his personal page. Physique, 1.1 spiritual, 0.1 physique is a general term for personal fitness, strength, agility, etc. Spirituality, as explained in the Book of Containment, is the total amount of supernatural power an individual possesses. For example, natural witches like Zoe and Madison are very spiritual. Those who can occasionally see unclean things such as ghosts and whose words are true also have spiritual beings. As for the vast majority of ordinary people in the world, they are not spiritual. In a way, this is a good thing. Know that when you stare into the abyss is also staring into you. Rob's original form was just an ordinary person without spirituality, which is why he was killed by Zoe's Black Widow ability. Rob traveled through time and space, and because of the Book of Shelter, his spirituality was awakened. But this amount is far from enough when facing Zoe. Therefore, even if it is for your own happiness, you should solve more supernatural incidents. Rob tried to put 10 containment points into spirituality. Spiritual, 0.1 spiritual, 0.210 shelter points increase an attribute by 0.1, so 100 shelter points can increase an attribute by a full point. Rob closed his eyes and felt the changes brought about by his spiritual improvement. Soon, he opened his eyes. I couldn't sense anything, and I don't know if it's because I don't have enough spiritual power. If I had known earlier, I would have invested the shelter in a more effective physical body. After all, as long as you run fast enough, no matter how scary the ghost is, it can catch up with you. Rob shook his head and left it at that. He didn't think any more about it. After a busy day, it was time to have a good rest. Late at night, just when all the witches had fallen asleep, in the room of the Supreme Witch Fiona, an obese old woman wearing a skirt from the last century, who was tied tightly to a chair, was struggling hard. Delphi Lalayuri, the original owner of the famous Madame Lalayuri haunted house that Rob had seen online before. Because she liked to use all kinds of torture to persecute black slaves, she even turned the Voodoo Queen's lover into a minotaur. As a result, she was cursed by the extremely angry Voodoo Queen and became a perverted woman who lay alive in a coffin for 180 years and could not die. In the morning, the witches had a field trip class. When they passed by Madame Lalayuri's haunted house, Fiona accidentally discovered Madame Lalayuri, who had lived for more than 200 years, because of Nan's mind-reading ability. She, who had an extreme desire for immortality, dug it out and brought it back to her room, preparing to torture it the next day. Finally coming out of the dark coffin, Defir Lalayuri, who couldn't sleep, wanted to escape from the place where she was imprisoned and gain true freedom. However, she couldn't help but tell it, and it even woke up Fiona. "Oh my god! Can't you just be quiet for a moment? You know, staying up late is very harmful to a woman's skin." Fiona came up to Defil with an impatient look on her face and was about to cast a little spell to quiet him down. Suddenly, she frowned and turned her eyes to the door. "Why is there an evil spirit in the house? What's going on?" Fiona had just finished speaking when they were in Rob's room. Rob, who was sleeping soundly, was awakened by the sudden and violent collision. When he opened his eyes, he saw the cold wind howling in through the open windows and door. The temperature in the room dropped rapidly, visibly. "Oh my god! Really coming again?" Rob shuddered at this all too familiar opening, and without a word he immediately reached for the luggage bag. "Hiss, give my golden arm back to me." Along with the familiar voice, the one-armed female corpse appeared in front of Rob again. Damn it! The ghost is still here. With previous experience, Rob was no longer as afraid of the female corpse as ordinary people. He swung his golden arm again and hit the other party hard. However, he forgot that the reason he was successful before was because Madison helped to freeze it. Although the female corpse is covered in rotten flesh, she moves much faster than a normal person. Rob was caught off guard and was hit hard by the other person. He flew backwards as if he was hit by a car. Bang! His back hit the ground hard. Before Rob could even scream in pain, he saw the female corpse flying towards him. Rob quickly crossed his golden arm in front of him to prevent himself from being crushed by the mountain. Hiss, my golden arm! Damn, thief, give me back my golden arm! The female corpse opened its rotten mouth full of maggots and roared at Rob, while her only left hand grabbed the golden arm in front of her and tried to snatch it away. The golden arm is the only weapon that can control the female corpse. Rob naturally did not allow the female corpse to take it away. Even though he was disgusted by the female corpse so close to him, he still exerted force with both hands and held down the golden arm tightly. It's just that the female corpse's strength was unexpectedly great. As time went by, Rob became anxious as he saw the golden arm moving towards the female corpse little by little. The sound of footsteps suddenly rang out. Along with it came a violent invisible shock. Wave. Chapter 17. Boom! Suddenly, the female corpse who was muttering golden arm in ecstasy flew backwards uncontrollably like a golf ball that was hit, and hit the wall with a loud noise. Rob looked back happily, just in time to see Fiona striding in. Finally, the wait has come. He breathed a sigh of relief. Boy, I want to hear the whole story later. Fiona waved her hand and pressed down the angry female corpse again. She looked at Rob and said lightly. Certainly. Rob quickly stood up and ran behind Fiona's absolute thigh with his golden arm. Zoe, who was wearing a nightgown, and Madison, who was wearing only black underwear, also followed. Rob, are you okay? Zoe walked up quickly with a worried look on her face and grabbed Rob's arm to carefully check if there were any injuries. Don't worry, I'm not hurt. Rob comforted. Then he looked at Madison, who said with a bad look on his face, a female corpse appeared in my place just now. There was also a female corpse in Madison? Rob subconsciously looked inside the house and saw the female corpse who had just attacked him being beaten by Fiona. Are there more than one female corpse? What's going on? There is only one golden arm. Rob was puzzled. At this time, Fiona didn't bother with the female corpse anymore. She only saw her eyes fixed on the female corpse. In an instant, raging flames spontaneously ignited on the female corpse. The female corpse let out a sharp scream and tried to put out the fire on her body, but the flames only grew more intense. In the end, it reluctantly stretched out its left hand, just aimed at the golden arm in Rob's hand, and its whole body suddenly collapsed and disappeared. Just like before in the hotel, the moment the female corpse disappeared, all signs disappeared, leaving only Rob's somewhat messy room. Fiona was not surprised by this phenomenon and waved her hand to extinguish the remaining flames in the room. It's all over. The female corpse that Rob and Madison had spent a lot of effort to defeat by accident using the golden arm was easily dealt with by Fiona. This is the Supreme Witch. The strongest of the Salem witch lineage. If ordinary witches have one or several talents, then the Supreme Witch has countless, and some even believe that it is all talents. It is worth noting that Fiona is now much weaker than normal. Okay, Rob and Madison, now you can tell me what trouble you got into. Fiona clapped her hands and turned to ask. Rob was about to answer when footsteps were heard outside. Cordelia, Queenie, and Nan also ran over at this time. What happened? Cordelia asked anxiously. A female corpse. A very scary female corpse. Nan answered first with a grim look on his face. Queenie rubbed his eyes and asked in confusion, what the hell? Looking at the noisy scene in front of her, Fiona sighed and said helplessly, let's have a late-night meeting. Girls, go change your clothes and then go downstairs for the meeting. Spalding, go get a pot of coffee. Because he had to change out of his children's clothes, Spalding, who arrived last, nodded expressionlessly after hearing Fiona's instructions and went downstairs first. 10 minutes later, in the living room on the first floor. After refreshing themselves with coffee and changing their clothes, the group officially started the meeting. Tell me in detail, how come you got involved with an evil spirit in just one day? Fiona spoke first. Everyone looked at Rob and Madison, the instigators of this incident. Taking advantage of the gap just now, Rob, who had already prepared a draft in his mind, put the golden arm on the table and began to explain. To put it simply, he and Madison had nothing to do and wanted to go to a famous haunted hotel to see if there were any ghosts. As a result, someone blamed them and gave them the golden arm, which was a thing that attracted evil spirits, which led to a series of subsequent events. Foolish young man, why don't you live a good life instead of thinking about dying all day long? Fiona lit a cigarette and commented speechlessly. Queenie also gloated and said, Madison, when you saw the female corpse, did you pee your pants? Madison glanced at her disdainfully, if you were here, you would probably be so scared that you would curl up into a ball. All right. Cordelia quickly stopped the quarrel between the two and asked her mother seriously, have you dealt with the evil spirit? Fiona said, of course not, this is just a curse from an evil spirit. Madison was shocked, what? Even the Supreme Witch can't solve it. Zoe clutched Rob's arm tightly with a worried look on her face. Queenie stopped teasing, and when Nan was about to say something, Fiona sighed helplessly, looked at the witches as if they were idiots, and said, girls, you should study hard. Sometimes I really worry about the future of witches. Fiona went on to explain, a curse is not a boss like the ones you encounter when playing games. It can be completely eliminated by destroying its health bar. According to the understanding of wizards, it is a law. Unless the law is discovered and broken, or the person who cast the curse is killed, the curse will continue to exist. Because you touched the golden arm, you were cursed by its original owner. The female corpse is just a product of the curse, not the real body. Even if you destroy it once, the curse will come again a second time. Hearing this, Queenie, who was about to play with the golden arm on the table, was so scared that he quickly withdrew his hand for fear of being cursed. Rob then asked, is the curse on the golden arm that we will often be attacked by female corpses? Fiona exhaled the cigarette in her mouth and said, yes, every time night falls, the curse will come. The specific frequency varies from once to twice. Of course, the further you go, the longer the interval. After all, there are many people who are still alive and kicking after being cursed. Cordelia looked at Fiona and asked what everyone was thinking, is there any way to solve the curse? Fiona spread her hands, I can cast a protection spell on this house. As long as you don't go out at night, the curse will not fall. No. Madison heard this and shook his head repeatedly with an expression even worse than when he faced the female corpse. She doesn't want to miss out on the colorful nightlife. Cordelia also frowned. This was only a temporary solution and not a permanent cure. As a competent principal who cares deeply about her students and even the servants, she spoke again, as the Supreme Witch, there should be a better way. The Supreme Witch is not a god. Fiona shook her head. Of course, there is a way to solve it all at once. I won't talk about breaking the rules of the curse. It's a thankless task and a waste of time. The simplest way is to find the source of the curse and kill the other party. Chapter 18. Then do it. Cordelia looked at Fiona and said firmly, the Supreme Witch has the responsibility to protect the witch community. You should do it, and with your power, it will be easy to deal with the evil spirits. Fiona was silent. After a while, she looked at her daughter and shook her head. I have something important to do right now and can't be distracted by anything else. Seeing her body aging rapidly and fearing death, she had to find a way to survive. Especially when the real-life case of Delphi Lalaurie is discovered. Wasting his time on a young witch and a manservant. She can't do it. Of course, as the Supreme Witch, she would still help as much as possible. I can divine the location of the owner of the curse. Madison, I will teach you the exorcism spell. You and Rob will be more than capable of dealing with the evil spirit behind the curse. This will also be another practical lesson for you. I'll go with them. Cordelia spoke before Rob and Madison nodded. She knew her mother's character well, and she knew that if she said she wouldn't go, she really wouldn't go. In that case, she might as well go with him. After all, teachers are supposed to protect students. You're going. Fiona laughed. You're going to give the evil spirits the potion? It's more reliable to bring a gun with you. Growing up under the shadow of her mother, the Supreme Witch, Cordelia's talent has not been fully developed due to her own influence, and now she only shows the ability in herbal cultivation and potion making. In terms of combat effectiveness, he may not be able to beat Madison. Fiona, who still cares about her daughter, naturally didn't allow the other party to go. I'll go, Rob is my boyfriend. Zoe said at this time. Fiona rolled her eyes. Girl, you've only been here a few days, what else can you do except scream? Nan, who was about to say something, immediately shut his mouth. Queenie, on the other hand, was a little hesitant. She was quite capable, but the thought of helping Madison, whom she had always disliked. In the end, she raised her hand out of kindness, and was about to speak when Fiona interrupted her impatiently. It's decided. Bringing more people will only cause trouble. If you are interested, you might as well think more about how to improve your abilities instead of showing off your sisterly love here. Fiona made the final decision. Afterwards, she picked up the golden arm without caring about the curse, closed her eyes, and began to use her divination ability. To ordinary people without spiritual awareness, this mysterious picture seems a bit supernatural. But the witches around him were watching very seriously. Rob, whose spirituality has reached 0.2, also vaguely felt the mysterious fluctuations from Fiona. This reminded him of the masters of shaman dances he had seen in his previous life. Maybe 99 out of 100 are fake, but among them, there will always be one real one. A few minutes later, Fiona opened her eyes and said the address, Alpena County, Michigan. Rob and Madison looked at each other and nodded seriously. Finally, Fiona said meaningfully, a Supreme Witch will be born in every witch class. Madison, I look forward to your performance. Madison, who had always longed to become the Supreme Witch, immediately became eager to try when she heard this. As for Rob, Fiona reminded him, every steward of this house is loyal to the witch. Rob, remember why you are here. Rob, who had been very quiet and obedient under the powerful aura of the Supreme Witch, nodded solemnly, I'll keep it in mind. Alpena County is a small county in the northeastern part of Michigan's Lower Peninsula, located on the western shore of Lake Huron. Starting from New Orleans to here, it almost goes through the entire north and south of the United States. Time was running out, so after saying goodbye to Zoe and the other witches who looked worried, Rob and Madison went to the airport with the Golden Arm and flew to Alpena Regional Airport on a small business jet specially chartered by Fiona. As the Supreme Witch, Fiona could easily accumulate wealth through hundreds of years of accumulation as a witch or her own abilities. This was also the reason why she had been living a carefree life outside for decades and even had money to invest in anti-aging experimental research, Chartering a small passenger plane was naturally a great relief to her wallet. Otherwise, if you take an airline flight, you will have to change flights multiple times, which is troublesome. Yes, there are no direct flights between New Orleans and Alpena County, or even Lansing, the capital of Michigan. Although the United States is a superpower, its performance in popularizing public transportation is average. This is also one of the reasons why almost every American family has a car. On the commercial aircraft, Rob took the drink handed to him by the graceful stewardess and thanked her. After taking a few sips, he looked at Madison, who was reading a fashion magazine, and asked in a low voice, "Did you remember the exorcism spell that Fiona taught you?" "Don't worry, compared to the lines in the movie script, the spell is much simpler," Madison said without looking up. "Besides, if you really can't memorize it, you can just read it while you read it. I have the paper with the exorcism spell with me." Rob was speechless. He was relieved to hear the first half of the sentence, but after hearing the latter part, he didn't know whether to say that Madison was generous or that she had the courage to die. Young people who seek death always die quickly. This can be seen by looking at the young generation of Americans who appear in horror thrillers. In order to avoid forgetting the words at the critical moment when fighting with the female corpse, thus causing a complete loss, Rob hurriedly urged Madison to practice the exorcism spell more. If someone else had been so noisy, Madison would have been annoyed and thrown him away. But Rob, forget it. This delicious piece of meat has not yet been eaten. Finally, although she showed impatience on her face, Madison put down the fashion magazine with a pout and started to review the exorcism spell. Looking at this scene, Rob finally breathed a sigh of relief and turned his gaze to his book of shelter. When the female corpse appeared for the second time, although he did not kill it personally, he still gained 10 shelter points after Fiona took action. This proves the feasibility of finding helpers to solve supernatural events together. Rob looked at the physique and spiritual on his personal page. When the war comes, it is more effective to strengthen the physical body than to improve the pitiful spiritual power. He recalled the scene in which the female corpse slapped him and sent him flying. Rob puts 10 containment points into his body. Physique, 1.2 compared to the subtle feeling when his spiritual power was enhanced. At this moment, Rob felt a warm current flowing through his body. His arms exerted strength and his muscle lines seemed to become more obvious. It would be nice if there were more shelters. By then, no matter how loudly the female corpse screams, I can use physical means to suppress her under me. Rob thought this in his heart and looked at the floating white clouds outside the window with longing. I hope this time the business will have a great opening. Chapter 19. A little over 2 hours later, at Alpena Regional Airport. This small airport, which mainly serves the local community and business travelers, welcomed a small business aircraft. As the crew saw them off, Rob and Madison left the plane carrying backpacks containing their golden arms. After walking out of the airport, they rented a car and drove to downtown Alpena following the navigation instructions. 10 minutes later, Rob and his companions arrived at their destination safely. The total population of Alpena County is only about 20,000 to 30,000 people. Excluding the towns, the population of the city center is no more than 10,000 people. In the administrative division of the United States, the county is the higher level than the city. If you stroll around here, you can basically reach the end in just a few steps. Although Fiona has divined the location of the golden-armed evil spirit, the exact location is unclear because the distance is too far, and Rob and the others still need to investigate. Because we set out early, there was still some time before noon. In order to get rid of the evil spirit as soon as possible to avoid another curse at night, Rob and his companions did not have the leisure to stroll around this small town with a style different from New Orleans, and acted quickly. Rob came to a convenience store and bought a local map. When he was checking out, he chatted with the owner and asked casually, "Boss, do you have any strange legends here?" "Legend? The kind that's designed to scare children?" The chubby middle-aged male boss glanced at Rob and Madison beside him. He thought this was just another couple who came to the countryside to have some fun and laughed. Murderers, evil cults, forest ghosts, aliens. No matter which rural town you go to, they can tell you similar horror stories. The boss deliberately added, but sometimes it may not be false. Be careful, young people like you who come from big cities, with delicate skin and good looks, are often the primary targets of those evil beings. Madison, who was boredly browsing the merchandise in the store, said disdainfully, "Let them come, I promise to twist them into a ball and kick them like a ball." "Your girlfriend? She's very hot." the boss said to Rob in surprise with a double meaning. Rob smiled but didn't answer. Then he asked, in addition to these familiar legends, are there any other novel stories? For example, I once heard someone say that there is a one-armed person here. That's enough. Before Rob could finish his words, he was interrupted loudly by his boss. His expression suddenly turned ugly as he said, if you want to continue to enjoy a good time with your girlfriend, don't ask about this anymore. If I were you, I would drive around here for a few laps, drink a few glasses of local wine, buy some local handicrafts, or even go to some deserted corner and play some French games before leaving. Don't play some adventure games. Rob's eyes moved, and he wanted to ask something, but the boss had already sent him away in a tough manner. Coming to the street with the map, Rob looked at Madison and said, it seems that there is indeed a problem here. The existence of the female corpse, or the evil spirit, has affected the locals and even made them feel scared. Madison said, this shows that we are in the right place. Rob frowned and said, just looking at the boss's attitude, I know that the locals don't seem to be willing to tell the truth. Don't worry, not everyone will keep the secret. Just leave it to me next. Madison said confidently. It's up to you? How to do it? Rob asked curiously. Madison pointed at the map in Rob's hand. First, you have to help me find the location of the bar downtown. Colorful lights flashed and tense metal music echoed. Although it was still daytime, when Rob and Madison arrived at the nearest bar in the city center, they saw many men and women enjoying themselves inside. It's pretty average. Madison, who was like a fish in water here, first commented on the bar, then pointed to a group of young people not far away, and raised his eyebrows confidently to Rob and said, 10 minutes. I can make these guys tell me who their first target was, not to mention the others. When Rob heard this, he immediately stretched out his hand and made a please gesture. So, Madison walked over to the group of young people and greeted them, hey, boys, is there any wine here? The group of young people were stunned at first, and then looked straight at Madison. As a Hollywood movie star, Madison is one of the best in terms of dressing, appearance, and figure. This is something that young people who cannot get into these universities, have spent most of their lives in the countryside and have limited vision can't handle. Soon, Madison easily joined in, and the request for free drinks was approved unanimously. We are not little boys. Some of the young men couldn't wait to say. Really? But I see you all still look like unshed birds. Madison's words immediately angered all the young people. So, when faced with Madison's next question of proving your questions, everyone rushed to answer. This included the 10-minute deadline Madison had just set for Rob. After giving Rob, who was not far away, a how is it look, as the conversation was going so smoothly, Madison naturally asked questions about the golden arm. As soon as these words were spoken, the young people, who had already gotten drunk and were spitting out liquor, suddenly stopped. Fortunately, a young man named Mike slammed the table and said disdainfully, what's wrong with telling it? It's just a ghost story. Those old guys were scared, but it doesn't mean I will. They are just a bunch of cowards. Hearing this, Madison immediately looked at Mike with admiration. This made Mike very happy, and he quickly told the ghost stories he knew about the golden arm. Seeing that the beautiful woman was actually attracted to Mike, the other young men, unwilling to give up, ignored their original fears and started talking to her like peacocks spreading their tails to the opposite s*x. This is how the story of the golden arm unfolds. The protagonist of the story, a woman named Heather, was once the most beautiful girl in Alpena County. She has a husband who dotes on her. Although she spent money lavishly, her husband never complained. When the two were living a happy life, suddenly an accident happened. A logging accident caused Heather to break her right arm. This is unacceptable to Heather, who loves beauty. At her pleading, her husband built her a golden arm through mortgage and loan. Even when she was suffering from life-threatening lung disease, Heather refused to remove the golden arm. Finally, before she died, she asked her husband to bury the golden arm with her. The husband agreed. But the good times did not last long. Under the pressure of huge debt, the regretful husband dug up his wife's grave and took out the golden arm. Result. At this point, Mike drank a glass of wine and said in an exciting and creepy tone, the next day, the neighbors who found something wrong came to the husband's house and were horrified to find that he was dead and lying on the bed with his wife who had been buried in the coffin for a long time, and the golden arm was right between the two. Chapter 20. It's an old story. As if dissatisfied with the fact that Mike attracted too much of Madison's attention, a companion spoke loudly. When Madison looked over, he excitedly continued, the neighbors were so scared that they reburied the couple and the golden arm. All these years had been peaceful. But a while ago, a group of grave robbers came and stole the golden arm from the coffin again. That's why there are rumors that Heather's evil spirit keeps wandering and screaming at night. Yes. I heard that the locals have been hearing heavy footsteps and terrible roars outside at night. Many hunting dogs and poultry were gutted and their organs eaten. Not only that, several people went out to investigate at night and never came back. It's no use asking a priest to perform an exorcism. People are naturally curious about supernatural and mysterious things, besides being afraid of them. If everyone still had reservations at the beginning, now under the stimulation of alcohol, beauty, and crowds, they are speaking openly. Humph! What evil spirit? A murderer. Only those old people who believe everything they hear are true. It's an era now. Even if a demon comes, I can kill it with one shot. Who has the guts? Come with me and see it for yourself. Whether we expose the lies or capture the so-called evil spirit, we will all be heroes of the county. Seeing that Madison's attention was attracted by other people, Mike, who was in desperate need of an opportunity to perform, slammed the table and said boldly. The others who were drunk, encouraged by Mike, agreed excitedly, just go. Anyone who doesn't go is a coward. We are the most courageous people in the county, of course we have to go. Hee, I wonder how it feels for the most beautiful Heather to become an evil spirit. If no one stops them, these courageous young people will definitely kill themselves one by one like in a Hollywood horror movie. Madison, who was away from a young man who wanted to kill the evil spirit, didn't pay attention to the group's lofty words. She had already learned a lot of information and asked again, where do the rumors of evil spirits come from? Green Township in Alpena County. Heather is buried there, one person answered. The other drunken man suddenly pointed at a middle-aged black man not far away and said, that guy used to be a farmhand under Heather's husband. He knows more. Thank you. Madison turned his head to look at the black man, then waved goodbye to the group of young people who were no longer valuable. Don't go. It's still early, play with us for a while. I can prove to you that I'm really big. Seeing Madison about to leave, Mike, who was drunk, quickly stood up and blocked her way, reluctantly stretched out his hand, and tried to force this beauty to stay. Madison waved her hand secretly, and Mike suddenly stumbled and hit his face hard on the floor, causing his head to bleed. As the other companions hurriedly lifted it up, Madison stood up without anyone trying to stop him and asked leisurely, by the way, I heard that Heather was the most beautiful girl here. Is she as beautiful as me? No. A person who had seen Heather before looked up and said blankly. That's good. In a good mood, Madison turned and left. After meeting up with Rob, she told him the intelligence she had obtained. Rob looked at the black man who was drinking alone. He was said to be a farmhand of the Golden Arm couple. He stroked his chin and said, let's find him to confirm it in the end. Rob strode up to the black man and got straight to the point, hey, I'm Agent Smith from the Pentagon's Abnormal Processing Division. I want to ask you something. As he spoke, he took out a palm-sized badge, waved it in front of the black man, and quickly took it back. This was certainly not a certificate from the Exception Handling Department, but a commemorative badge given to him by the Montelian Hotel. It is more than enough to deceive a black man who has lived in a small rural town all his life working as a lumberjack and doesn't even know how many departments there are in the county, let alone the Pentagon. Sure enough, although the black man was a little confused, he did not refute. He just drank his wine by himself and asked without much interest, what's the matter? Your name, sir? Andy. Mr. Andy, excuse me for a few minutes. I want to ask you something about the Golden Arm. Bang! As soon as Rob finished speaking, Andy's hand holding the wine glass trembled, and the glass fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Andy didn't care about it. He just used bloodshot eyes to warn Rob in horror, don't say that. Rob still had a smile on his face as he said, believe me, we are here to solve all this. Didn't you report this to the police before? They couldn't handle this, so they sent us here. You guys. Andy looked at Rob's young face, which was not much older than his son, with a surprised look, and questioned, this is not a prank. Can you do it? You know, even the priest came back empty-handed. Every profession has its own expertise. The main duty of a priest is to communicate with God. To deal with evil spirits, we still have to rely on professionals like us. Rob said with a confident smile on his face. Then, he glanced at the ring on Andy's left ring finger and said, "Don't worry, we know more about evil spirits than you think, so we naturally won't treat them as fake things to scare people. Solving it early will only benefit your family and your children, not harm them, am I right?" Perhaps he was infected by Rob's confidence, or perhaps he thought of his family. Andy's heart moved, and he gritted his teeth and said, "Whatever you want to ask, I'll tell you." "Very good." Rob began to ask. At first, what Andy described was similar to what he had heard from Madison, but it was more detailed. However, after the golden arm was stolen, he revealed more new information. We all know how important the golden arm is to Heather. Even though she knew there was a huge amount of gold under the tomb, she never dared to be greedy. However, if those damn thieves who got the news from somewhere hadn't stolen the golden arm, Heather wouldn't have woken up from her long sleep. Greentown wouldn't be like this now. Andy said indignantly. "Rob, what?" Andy said horribly, "Every night, Heather would resurrect from her corpse and wander around the town angrily. At first, there were young people who didn't believe in it and went to investigate, but soon they never showed up again, without exception. Don't go out at night." Chapter 21. What about during the day? Is there any danger during the day? Rob asked. During the day, it's okay, but there's still an indescribable sense of panic. Andy said with lingering fear, the families in the town who can afford it have all moved away during this period, leaving only those of us who are too poor to afford food to live in the town. In fact, we have tried. When the thieves could not be caught for a while, the people in the town jointly cast an identical golden arm. But when we bravely wanted to send the new golden arm to Heather's cemetery, we found that the other party's body had disappeared. At this point, Andy recalled the frightening scene and drank a large glass of wine before continuing. Although we were scared, we still wanted to leave the golden arm there so that Heather could see it when she came back. But to everyone's disappointment, the footsteps and roars at night continued. When we went to see it the next day, the new golden arm was still there, and it was broken into several pieces. Heather didn't accept it. All she wanted was the real golden arm. Rob glanced at the real golden arm in his backpack and said calmly, "So, since the accident, Heather's body has been missing, right? Even during the day?" "Yes. Just like when she used an axe to kill her husband who took her golden arm. But this time, she will never rest in peace." "I see." Rob then asked some more questions. For example, where is Heather buried, where was her residence during her lifetime, etc. After asking almost everyone, he said goodbye to Andy with an expectant look on his face. "It has been confirmed that the evil spirit that cursed us is Heather. She has a physical body, but she doesn't show up during the day." Rob returned to Madison and said, "At night, according to Andy, Heather would be more dangerous. In addition, you and I are still cursed, so our best choice is to find Heather during the day and get rid of her completely." Madison agreed. Evil spirits rarely leave the area where they moved around in their lifetime. If you look carefully at Heather's former home, the cemetery, and other places she liked to stay in her lifetime, you'll find something. If all else fails, we still have this. Rob patted the golden arm in his backpack and said, "If Heather knew we had returned the golden arm to her, she would definitely show up with gratitude." "Indeed." Madison curled her lips and said, "Let's get going now. Once we get rid of the evil spirit, we'll leave quickly. Rude residents, bad decoration, low-quality drinks, everything here is too boring." Rob nodded. The two left the bar and were about to get in the car. A policeman wearing a camel-colored uniform and a cowboy hat suddenly appeared, stopped them, and asked, "You two look strange, are you just passing by or what?" Alpena County has such a small population that outsiders stand out. Generally speaking, when local police see outsiders, they will question them for safety reasons. After all, America is a land of talented people and beautiful scenery. Who knows if the person who comes here may be a master who has attained enlightenment in Longchong? Rob didn't interrupt, leaving everything to the charming Madison. "I heard that Alpena County has beautiful scenery. My boyfriend and I are planning to visit here," Madison explained with a smile. The policeman quickly let down his guard and said enthusiastically, "Beautiful lady, I hope you can gain a good memory here." Before leaving, he gave Madison a business card, telling her she could call him anytime if she had any problems. Watching the police drive away in the police car, Madison threw away the business card and got on the driveway. Let's go. Rob started the car. The wheels rolled over the business card and headed toward Greentown. Surrounded by sugar maple trees and red oaks, Greentown looks like a beautiful place, perfect for camping and vacation. When Rob and Madison drove here, they saw a desolate and deserted scene. Occasionally, one or two people appeared in the field of vision, moving quickly with panicked looks on their faces, not caring at all about the unfamiliar faces that appeared here. Language is inadequate to describe the situation. Only by seeing it with your own eyes can you truly understand the current situation of the town where evil spirits are rampant as described by Andy. With accurate information, Rob and his companions did not disturb the residents here and drove directly to the first target Andy told them, Heather's cemetery. Although it was daytime, the cemetery with rows of tombstones still looked very eerie. Of course, this is true all over the world. Except for the Martyrs' Cemetery. After getting off the car, Rob's face became tense, and Madison also changed from her previous relaxed look to become extremely serious. Although Fiona taught them the solution, they had experienced the curse of the evil spirit themselves, and this time they were facing the evil spirit itself, so they could not be careless at all. When we arrived at the cemetery that the townspeople had rebuilt for Heather, we could see that the soil behind the tombstone had been dug up, revealing the coffin, and the owner inside had long since disappeared. Did you find anything? Rob asked Madison. Although the latter does not have abilities such as the clairvoyance or the yin-yang eyes, the witch's perception still allows her to discover clues that ordinary people cannot detect. It has the same smell as the female corpse in the curse we encountered, but even stronger. Madison looked around the cemetery with a serious expression. It doesn't look like it's here now. Not here? Looks like I have no choice but to use my own methods. Not wanting to wait until late at night, Rob unzipped his backpack, took out the golden arm, and waved it while shouting, Hey! Miss Heather, I brought you your golden arm, come and get it. The cold wind howled, blowing up the fallen leaves in the cemetery. After a few minutes, there was no movement. It's obviously a little far away now, Rob said, lowering his golden arm. I thought it would appear in front of us with a whoosh. Generally speaking, evil spirits are not as powerful during the day as they are at night, Madison explained. Since it has never left this town, its activities are limited to that area. We can't find it in the cemetery, so we'll look for it in its original home. Certainly. Rob put away his golden arm again and started the car again. Not long after, a dusty house that looked like it had not been lived in for a long time appeared before them. This is the former home of Mr. and Mrs. Heather. After the strange incident in which her husband died tragically at home and Heather's body slept beside him with her golden arms around her, no one dared to take over the house, not even close, and it has been vacant until now. The sound of the engine shutting down was heard. Rob and Madison got out of the car, pushed open the dusty door and just entered. Rob was about to use his old trick to take out the golden arm. A familiar and creepy voice has sounded, Hiss, my golden arm. Chapter 22. It's here. Rob was surprised at first, then delighted. Finally found the real owner. Madison knew. Madison knew what Rob wanted to say and quickly recalled the spell of the exorcism spell, waiting for the real target to appear so as to cast it on him. Hiss, give me back my golden arm. The roar from the evil spirit Heather was getting closer and closer. The sound of heavy footsteps rang in the ears of the two. Rob was trying to identify the direction of the footsteps. Suddenly, the floor beneath my feet made a cracking sound. Rob's pupil shrank, and before he could open his mouth, he reacted faster than ever before, hugged Madison and flew forward. Next second. Snap! Along with the sharp edge, a huge crack was cut on the floor where the two were originally. If they were still there before, their feet would probably be gone. Bang! 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 In just a few breaths, the cracks on the floor grew bigger and bigger. Soon, the female corpse that Rob and the others were very familiar with crawled out from under the floor. What was different from before was that this time the female corpse named Heather was holding a long-handled axe with a blood-stained blade in her one arm. Give me back, my golden arm. Heather's blood-stained eyes looked straight at Rob, or to be exact, at the golden arm in the other's backpack. The heavy footsteps sounded again. Heather held a long axe and rushed towards Rob with a ferocious look. Bang! 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 Rob fired. Although bullets cannot kill Heather, they can still stop her from taking action. Ding ding ding! The yellow shell fell to the ground. Although Heather was unharmed as she rushed towards Rob, she had to retreat under the impact of the bullet. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Madison, who had already discussed a countermeasure with Rob, opened his hands and quickly recited an exorcism spell towards Heather. Unperceivable to ordinary people, with every exorcism spell Madison recited, the spiritual light in her body fluctuated rapidly. Correspondingly, Heather, who had just looked like she could never be killed, trembled all over, as if an invisible hand was pulling her towards the unknown depths of darkness, and a roar of anger and fear suddenly came out of her mouth. Heather struggled desperately. Madison was also under tremendous pressure from the counterattack, and the further he chanted the spell, the more difficult it became. Suddenly, the whole room was in turmoil. The shrill screams of evil spirits, the mysterious sounds of witchcraft, the overlapping illusions, and the continuous invisible shock waves. So put together. Fortunately, Rob's spirituality was awakened, otherwise he would have fainted facing the bizarre scene. After observing the scene, he even had enough energy to grab a baseball bat with peeling paint in the house. He endured the discomfort and quickly rushed to Heather, who was holding her head and screaming, and raised the baseball bat to beat her hard. Heather focused all her energy on fighting the exorcism curse and could only let Rob act arrogantly in front of her. It was fine at the beginning. Although Rob hit it so hard that the rotten flesh flew everywhere, it actually had no effect. However, Rob quickly changed his mind and punched its legs hard. Snap! Heather's knees made a crackling sound as they could no longer bear the weight. It was trying its best to fight against the exorcism spell, but suddenly it staggered and fell to the ground uncontrollably. This undoubtedly broke the balance in the confrontation. Seeing Madison's voice getting louder and louder as she chanted the exorcism spell, and Heather, who was kneeling on the ground, becoming increasingly worse, Rob was about to add more strength. A high-pitched scream suddenly burst out of Heather's mouth. It threw all its strength into a desperate attempt, swung its intact left arm violently, and the long axe in its hand passed by Rob like a sharp arrow and flew towards Madison at an incredible speed. A piercing sonic boom sounded. Madison, who was chanting a spell, was startled when he saw the extremely sharp axe flying towards him. She was very clear that if she was hit by this blow, she would definitely be split in half, so she quickly stopped the spell. At the last moment, she moved her mind and the long axe narrowly passed by her. Madison's face was covered in sweat. Just as he was getting scared, the roar as loud as raging waves sounded again. Heather, no longer affected by the exorcism spell, raised her left hand and grabbed the baseball bat that was hitting her again. Rob tried to shake him off with both hands, but found that the other party was stronger than he imagined. Even in the daytime, Heather's true form was much stronger than what she had seen in her previous cursed state. Seeing that the baseball bat was about to be taken away, Rob, who was struggling with it, suddenly let go. Heather couldn't help but step back. Taking advantage of this gap, Rob pulled out his gun again and fired bullets at Heather, forcing her to continue retreating. Madison! Just as he was about to speak, a sharp sound of breaking through the air interrupted everything. Heather repeated her old trick by throwing a baseball bat at him. In desperation, Rob could only roll over and dodge. No longer bothered, Heather ignored Rob. For the first time, it temporarily put aside its obsession with the golden arm and turned its attention to Madison. In this woman, it felt a real threat to itself and had to get rid of her as soon as possible. Tap, tap, tap. Rob's previous action of smashing his knee did not affect Heather's actions. She ran towards Madison at an unimaginable speed. By this time, Madison no longer had the energy to recite the spell word for word. Her heart pounding, she thrust her palms forward, a huge burst of consciousness erupting like a tornado. With a whoosh, Heather flew backwards and landed on the gap that was previously opened by the axe. With a loud thud, Heather fell down and did not climb out. The first floor returned to calm. Madison, panting, stared at the floor around him, fearing that a rotten hand would appear somewhere. Be careful, Madison. You may be its primary target. Rob, who had gotten up from the ground, quickly warned, stand on the sofa quickly. You will have some cushioning later. Madison did as she was told, and just as she lifted her foot, a dark, rotten hand reached out from under her body, with its sharp fingers tightly gripping her ankle. Then, boom! After Madison screamed, she fell down suddenly and disappeared quickly. Shit! Rob rushed over anxiously and was about to stick his head down into the crack. Sudden! Flames shot up from beneath the floor. Rob, who was almost burned, was not surprised but happy. When the flames died down, he reached down and yelled, "Madison!" A slender hand tightly grasped his hand. Rob lifted it upward. Although Madison looked a little disheveled, he was not seriously injured and was pulled up by him. Chapter 23. Under suffocating pressure, outstanding witches often awaken new powers. That's exactly what's happening to Madison right now. To put it bluntly, the witches of Salem are all sorcerers with magical blood. They do not need to study magic day and night, they just need to try their best to tap their untapped potential. Among them, the Supreme Witch is the most talented of the group. Although Madison is not as good as the Supreme Witch, her talent is definitely among the top among all witches. In the face of life and death crisis, after taking objects with her mind, she just awakened one of the 7 formations, the control of fire. "Are you okay?" Rob asked quickly. "I'm fine." Madison looked at the fire that was still burning below, and a look of excitement appeared on his face despite the remnant of fear. Snap! The floor cracked violently again. Having learned from previous lessons, Rob and Madison retreated early. After a few breaths, Heather, who was covered in a burnt smell and looked even more disgusting and ugly, climbed up. Just as it was about to rush over again with resentment, Madison stepped forward with a look of disgust on her face and said coldly, "You disgusting and ugly old woman, go to hell." Boom! Madison focused her eyes on Heather, who was once again ablaze with fire. Although its power is not as strong as the fire that Fiona originally cast. But under Madison's continuous release of flames, Heather could only roll over and over, wailing in pain. Seeing Heather's body melting in the flames, Madison smiled confidently at Rob and said, "It looks like there's no need for the exorcism spell." However, she was soon slapped in the face. A sharp scream like that of a hellish devil came out of Heather's mouth. The next second, its body collapsed on its own. As it turned into ashes and extinguished the surrounding flames, the shadow of a one-armed woman who looked to be in her 30s, with a pretty face but a ferocious expression appeared. The wind is howling. The indoor temperature dropped suddenly. What appeared before his eyes was the true form of the evil spirit named Heather. After fighting for such a long time, the experienced Madison was about to attack Rob without being reminded, but found that Heather disappeared in the blink of an eye. Just then, a cold wind suddenly blew behind Madison's neck. She looked back warily. Sudden! A hideous face appeared right before her eyes. "Ah!" Screams were heard. No matter how brave a person is, he will inevitably be frightened at this moment. Madison, a witch, is no exception. Just as her face turned pale for a moment, Heather suddenly poured into her body without giving her time to react. Possessed by evil spirit. In an instant, Madison's shiny golden hair moved like a snake without wind, and black blood vessels popped out on her beautiful face. Uncomfortable and filthy words kept coming out of her mouth, making people feel uncomfortable. "Oh my God!" Rob, who couldn't help but burst out in Mandarin, stared at all this in a daze. It all happened so fast. In the blink of an eye, reality became like this. The situation was too critical for him to think too much. Without hesitation, Rob immediately held Madison's body and shouted loudly in her ear, "Madison, stick to yourself. Don't let the evil spirit scare you. This is your body, your home. You are going to become the Supreme Witch. How can you be defeated by an evil spirit? Being possessed by evil spirits is more of a battle of souls and a clash of wills. According to the normal process, evil spirits will usually use a series of behaviors such as early harassment and intimidation to make the target person panic, and only when the will is weakened to a certain extent will they possess the person. This will ensure a very high success rate. But for Heather, the current situation is already very dangerous. There is no room for it to do anything else but to possess by force. It's just that Madison, as a witch, is different from ordinary people. Although she was caught off guard at first, she quickly recovered and began to confront Heather. At this time, Rob's shouts gave her great encouragement. "Think about Hermes. Think about Chanel. Think about Louis Vuitton. Think about lipstick, bags, perfume, necklaces, watches and high heels. Madison, are you willing to lose these? Think again about your dream of becoming a Hollywood star. Are you willing to be a has-been actor for the rest of your life? Or do you like to become disgusting and ugly like Heather? Then no man will be interested in you." Rob did not use the cliched plot of love to help Madison like in the movies. He has a deep understanding of the latter and every word he says goes straight to the core. "Really? A long howl came out of Madison's mouth. Violent invisible waves rushed rapidly in all directions with her as the center. As Rob hurriedly retreated, he saw Heather, who was even more unreal and weaker than before, exiting Madison's body in a mess. My golden arm! At this point, the severely injured Heather can only target Rob, hoping to use his body to regain the golden arm. The incorporeal Heather still moved very quickly. Rob wanted to dodge, but found that the other party had already attached himself to him. Before his expression changed drastically. But in a moment, he unexpectedly discovered that Heather had escaped from his body in terror, and her injuries seemed to be even more serious. It is hard to imagine that the evil spirit, a symbol of terror and evil, would one day become afraid of itself. Rob glanced at the Book of Containment in his mind. He noticed that the moment Heather possessed him, the Book of Shelter, which had been silent all the time, suddenly flipped a corner, and Heather was immediately severely injured. Apparently, the Book of Containment that already resides here doesn't want any other beings approaching. Rob, who did not expect such a pleasant surprise, turned his attention back to reality. After 2 failed possession attempts, they no longer needed to do anything, and Heather could hardly maintain her own existence. Madison, who had just recovered and hadn't noticed what had just happened, noticed Heather's condition and recited the exorcism spell again without thinking much about it. No more accidents happened. Amid Heather's unwilling wails, its silhouette became increasingly faint. Seeing that he is about to leave this world, the Book of Asylum in Rob's mind suddenly moved, and the pages were officially opened. A ray of light that only he could see flew out from Heather and into the Book of Containment. Bite. A supernatural being has been contained, and the containment book has been updated. The initial indicators have been completed. Rob breathed a sigh of relief after receiving the reminder from the Book of Containment. It's finally over. Not only was it because he had solved the problem of the golden-armed evil spirit, but also because the containment mission that had been weighing on his mind for the past few days and had made him unable to sleep well was finally completed. Although it's only temporary. But the beginning is always the hardest. With the successful experience of the first time, I think the second and third times will be a lot easier. Chapter 24. Heather was killed and the curse was no longer there. Mission accomplished. Madison's first reaction was not to sigh, but to quickly take out the small mirror she carried with her and carefully look at her face. When she found that she was still as attractive as ever, she breathed a sigh of relief. The ugly woman has finally gone back to hell. Rob, find a place to wash up first. You're so dirty, Madison said, looking at her branded clothes that were all dirty from the previous fight. Rob didn't refuse. He was dirtier than Madison. Heather's house had not been occupied for a long time and the water and electricity had been cut off. After the two left here, they randomly found a house that looked pretty and clean and walked in directly. Because of the haunting, everyone in the town with some assets, except the poor, moved away in a hurry. Naturally, there was no one in the house that Rob broke into. In addition, there was sufficient water and electricity, and there were even cold food in the refrigerator. The two of them took over the house and rested here for the time being. 10 minutes later, hot water kept flowing down from Rob's head. After washing off the dust and the fatigue from running all the way and fighting with Heather, Rob, feeling refreshed, summoned the Book of Shelter. On page number 1, the blank space has now been filled. No, 001 name Heather name archetype, evil spirit status, contained ability, evil spirit possession, evil spirit curse introduction, a woman who loves beauty very much. Whether she is alive or dead, her obsession with beauty has never weakened. After her arm was broken, the golden arm became Heather's greatest obsession. No matter who dares to take the golden arm, she will crawl out of hell and curse the thief endlessly until she gets her golden arm back. Next to the text description, there is also a lifelike portrait of Heather as an evil spirit. When Rob's eyes fell on it, he could see Heather, who had a golden arm installed on her right arm, vaguely saying happily, "My golden arm." An evil spirit was swallowed by the Book of Containment and just turned into a page inside. Rob flipped through the large number of blank pages at the back. He was surprised at the volume of the Book of Shelter and couldn't help but sigh at his own miserable fate as a worker in the future. Fortunately, the Book of Shelter is not an unscrupulous capitalist who only takes but does not give anything in return. This time, Heather was successfully taken in, and he gained 80 shelter points. Adding the 20 points gained from the previous 2 curses, he gained a total of 100 points from Heather. This is enough to increase one's attribute by a whole point. The returns are pretty good. So where should we invest the remaining 80 points? Heather's abilities are all related to evil spirits, and as a living person, I can't learn them even if I want to. It can only be focused on the physical and spiritual aspects. The benefits of physical fitness are self-evident. With a higher spiritual level, one can more clearly perceive non-physical supernatural creatures. It is also very important for myself, who will have to deal with the supernatural most of the time in the future. How to allocate it still needs careful consideration. Fortunately, after taking in Heather, he had some free time and there was no need to rush. Rob put away the Book of Shelter, reached for the towel beside him, and prepared to finish showering. Click! The bathroom door suddenly opened. Rob was startled and looked back quickly, and saw a blindingly white body without any cover appeared in front of him. The body is well proportioned, long where it should be long, and thin where it should be thin. Coupled with that aggressive and beautiful face, it can definitely give men a great impact. In this place, the only person like this could be Madison. Ahem. Rob was stunned for several seconds, then he remembered and quickly covered himself with a bath towel, shifted his gaze and said, "Madison, is there something wrong?" After the thrilling experience, Madison, who was in urgent need of relaxing, walked in openly, turned around, showed Rob her excellent figure and said, "You should know what I want, Rob. Do you need me to take the initiative? I don't mind being the one on top." "Ahem, Madison, I have a girlfriend." Rob, who was a little overwhelmed, said hurriedly. Madison stepped closer. "What's the problem? Does it mean we can't score a goal with a goalkeeper? Besides..." She came to Rob, who had no choice but to avoid her, and like a female gangster, she raised his chin and said with a determined attitude, "Rob, do you want to guard the Black Widow for the rest of your life? Believe me, after what I've been through, I absolutely mean it now. Come on, Rob." The temptation of the fairy keeps echoing in my ears. Just as Rob was about to suppress it with great willpower, the hot and delicate body of Ketone was already pressing on him. The next sentence was the last straw that broke the camel's back. "Rob, you're not gay, are you? Or not gay at all? I heard that Asians..." There is no after. Madison's incendiary words instantly set off everything for Rob. In order to prove himself, Rob did not hesitate and summoned the Book of Containment. Add sum. Physique, 1.21.3, plus. Physique, 1.31.4. Rob. A fierce battle was going on in the house where the owner was away. Afterwards, when Madison, who kept begging for mercy, fell asleep on him with a tired and satisfied look on her face, Rob nodded with satisfaction. It was worth his previous action. Although this goes against what I thought about after returning home. But since it was a matter of dignity, he couldn't afford to think too much. The results turned out to be very good. Not only did the old SIG bow down to him, but Rob also found an unexpected reward. What's going on? The pages of the shelter book in my mind suddenly made a rustling sound, very similar to the state when Heather was sheltered before. Puzzled, Rob opened the Book of Shelter. Then, he saw a surprising scene. After Heather, another new subject appeared on the page. It was Madison. No, 002 name Madison Montgomery type, Salem witch status, indirect containment ability, mind control, control of fire introduction. Even though she is restricted by her physical illness, Madison's witch qualifications are still among the best among the witches of Salem. But be careful of her arrogance, selfishness, cruelty, and ruthlessness. Perhaps, she needs a real man to subdue her. Is this what she has always been looking forward to? Next to him, a lifelike portrait of Madison, wearing a black evening gown and a hat with a veil that half covered her face, appeared before him. Etc. What is going on? Chapter 25. Rob looked at all this in confusion. He had no idea Madison would appear on the page. Isn't it the only way to contain the ghost by killing it? Just like Heather just now. Now that's nothing. Rob lowered his head and looked at Madison, who was naked in his arms in reality. Breathing is steady and body temperature is normal. He is clearly a living person, so how come he was taken away by the Book of Shelter? Rob suddenly thought of something and looked at the status column on the page. Compared to Heather's contained, Madison's is special containment. Are there different kinds of containment? By special, do you mean Madison is like this now? Rob looked at the lovely person in his arms again. After calming down and sensing carefully, he suddenly discovered something strange. Compared to before, he now seems to have a clearer perception of Madison. Even if he closed his eyes or even went to a place far away from the other person, he could still sense Madison's presence and even her condition. Of course, one cannot decide the other person's life or death, thoughts and will, etc. Is this another form of containment? Achieve it in a one-step approach? I don't know if other creatures besides humans can achieve this. The elegant and noble vampire lady, the tall and fit wolf girl, the seductive female devil, the unique female ghost. Ahem. You can't let your thoughts become more perverted. Rob glared at the Book of Containment with rage. It's all because of this thing. Why don't you learn good things and suddenly come up with such an unconventional style of painting? What special containment? Bah, etc. It doesn't seem impossible. Rob stared at the Book of Containment. In Madison's ability column, the two abilities mind control and fire control are shining, indicating that he can spend containment points to awaken the ability. Awakening ability? Rob's eyes lit up. He felt a little regretful that he didn't get much from Heather before. Unexpectedly, not only could he make up for it now, but he was also very familiar with it, which just happened to correspond to Madison's two abilities. So, under special shelter circumstances, you can also spend shelter points to learn the other person's abilities? For a moment, Rob thought of vampire ladies, wolf girls, and female demons. Receive. Back to reality. Rob selected the abilities with great interest. It costs 50 containment points to awaken the first ability, and the second ability is even more expensive. I spent 20 points in the previous fight with Madison, and I have 60 points left. This means that you can only awaken one ability. Rob was very familiar with both abilities. Mind control is like telekinesis in novels, and it can be said to be a powerful ability that can do anything. Controlling the flame is just as literal as it sounds. It is worth noting that it has a great killing effect on supernatural creatures such as evil spirits. Thinking of the screams of the evil spirit covered in flames under the gaze of Fiona and Madison, Rob quickly made a decision. If it were a person, he would definitely choose to control him with his mind. But when he had to deal with a large number of spirits later, Rob chose to control fire, which was more threatening to the spirits. 50 shelter points are crossed out. As the pages of the Book of Shelter were automatically opened, Rob quickly mastered the knowledge of controlling fire without any unfamiliarity. Rob opened his eyes and looked at the curtains not far away. As a ray of flame ignited in his pupils, a fierce flame also ignited on the curtains. Rob's mind moved again, and the burning fire was extinguished again. The only evidence of the flames were the blackened marks on the curtains. Yes, wherever you look, flames will be lit. Although it is not as accurate as Fiona lighting all the candles in the hall with a wave of her hand, it is definitely enough in battle. But Rob opened his palm and looked at a ball of fire rising from his palm, frowning a little. With the same fire, Madison's performance is much stronger than mine, not to mention Fiona. Plus, the duration is also very short. Compared with the witches, I can only be regarded as a castrated version. As time passed, the flame on the palm became weaker and weaker, and soon dissipated on its own. Rob rubbed his brows, feeling the spiritual energy in his body being consumed, and said to himself, so, the strength of ability is also closely related to spirituality. The higher the spirituality, the stronger the flames you can cast. After resting for a while and waiting for the spiritual energy in his body to be replenished, Rob invested the remaining 10 collection points into spiritual energy without hesitation, and his personal panel was updated again. Number 000 name, Rob type, human physique, 1.4 spiritual, 0.3 ability, control of fire containment point, 0 introduce. Compared to the beginning, Rob can now easily deal with many people even without American IAI. And this is just the change brought about by one containment. Rob summoned fire again, and after some attempts he found that although it was only slightly stronger than before, his idea was correct. Spirituality is important when it comes to ability. Of course, physical fitness cannot be neglected either. I am not an evil spirit. If a bullet comes down, not only myself, but also Madison will have to kneel. This is also the reason why witches and other spiritually awakened people, even though they possess all kinds of strange abilities, still remain dormant in modern society. However, evil spirits and ghosts that ordinary people cannot see, whose heads are full of evil thoughts, have little rationality, and are not afraid of thermal weapons, do not care about these things. Just like the evil spirit Heather who was defeated by herself and Madison. After absorbing all the gains this time, Rob had just put away the fire when Madison in his arms opened her eyes. Like a beautiful snake, she immediately wrapped herself around Rob tightly and expressed her satisfaction without any shyness. "My dear, you are really great. Any man would be happy to be praised like this by a beautiful lady. Rob is no exception." Without thinking about the supernatural anymore, he just wanted to relax and put his arm around Madison's waist, eager to try. "There's something even better, do you want to try it again?" "Certainly." After the break, Madison, feeling like she was back to her peak form, nodded excitedly. Rob took a long breath. He likes this kind of American life very much. A whole day. After dealing with Heather, Rob and Madison did not leave in a hurry. Instead, they took advantage of the owner's absence to turn the house upside down. There were traces of fighting everywhere, including the living room, bedroom, bathroom, balcony, and even the lawn outside. This can be considered as a small reward for helping the other party to eliminate the evil spirit. I think the owner of the house will not blame me when he finds out. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you are notified of future uploads. You can find the next parts in the playlist visible on the screen or on my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.